Monday, July 8th is the date. We are halfway through a legendary Season 6, and it's time for the Mid-Season Invitational. My name's Tom Battinger, and I'm joined here by Anatoly Alexeyenok. We're very excited to bring you the most exciting point of the year because, well, it's the big land time.
Mid-season invitational crossplay here to start things off. An interesting first set between Hype Unit and Flashpoint.
As totally alluded to, we've got a number of different teams coming together here. It's going to be the Pro League up against some of the best of the others. Pro League, of course, coming a little bit later. Right now, we're in the play-in bracket. Hype Unit and Flashpoint is how we're going to start off. Later on, we see Out Cold versus Armada. Team rival, the console team rival, will play against Sanguine, and then Nemesis versus Simplicity. As totally mentioned, Hype Unit and Flashpoint is where we're going to start. Hype Unit, one of the best teams on the console side. They've been impressive this year, last year, every time before that. And Flashpoint, another team that have stuck together and really tried to drive forward with the roster they've got. Tomorrow, or later on in the week, rather, we're going to see what happens with the rest of the teams. Rival, United, Splice, Dig, Knights, Renegades. That's the top 6 of the Pro League. And this is who lies in wait for the 2 teams strong enough to make it out of the play-ins.
The winners get their chance to get rewarded to face off against either Rival or Dignitas. A tough journey ahead, but this should be an interesting set.
Let's start talking real quick about this this first one, because Hype Unit and Flashpoint, this is one that I've been looking forward to straight up all weekend.
Yep.
When you look at what Flashpoint has been able to do, they come in with the same roster, similar to teams that we've seen. I think the most recent you can think of is sort of like the Poppies in them, but you can look at teams like what Raffer did, and you can look at some championship teams. Sticking together is very, very good for some of these squads, and with everybody here, for the most part, it's going to be nice. Johnny is here, and he's kind of the star of this team, to be honest with you, but they will have some fill-ins across the way. Hype Unit, on the other hand, these guys are ready to go.
The team that won Season 5, it wasn't with Inbound specifically, it was with Chapo, but regardless, still, Wolves is in the solo lane, but that man on your screen is Layers, the jungler, trying to make an impact today at LAN, always showing up when it matters the most.
Absolutely. KP, Layers of Death, whatever you want to call him, this guy has been an enigma in the jungle. His ability to go ahead and provide damage out of there and help this guy has been really important for what Hype Unit does day in and day out. Here's Wolves playing on the Jormungandr. He's been known for some of these crazy picks. You look at him as being Odin, you look at him as being some of these older selections. The Diamond Yorm comes out, and this is what he's able to do.
I love the fact that he's still able to be flexible in his god variety, being able to bring in the new picks like the Jormungandr, but still go back to his traditional Sun Wukong when he needs to.
Exactly. This guy's got flair. He's got style. He understands what it takes to win the game, and he understands that part of that is understanding yourself. And he goes in confident as all hell almost every time and is able to just make cleanup kills like that, set up kills like we saw before. This is the man. And this is absolutely the legend.
Even able to bring in the blink Sun Wukong action. He's a very aggressive player during the team fights when it matters, but likes to farm it up in the early laning phase. He's going to have, I think, an easier time than he was expected, because before it was going to be against Sibi, but not today.
But as I said earlier, I mean, this is monumental in SMITE history. We haven't seen crossplay yet. Wolves has been celebrated in the console league. Wolves has been considered one of the best players in the console league. People are afraid to go up against him in the console league. Now he'll be going up against PC players. Granted, Flashpoint not exactly in the Pro League, so perhaps in more even playing field.
It might alter the kind of picks that he opts for in terms of the solo lane, but I don't think his style is going to change at all, whether it's the early game or the late game. Flashpoint definitely need to have done their homework up against Hype Unit, because with Wolves in the solo lane having such a diverse god pool, you know that the other frontliner, Inbound, the support player, is going to be bringing in the pain too, because he loves his aggressive supports.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting one for sure, like I said. I mean, knowing knowing what's going on as far as the console and the minor league teams are concerned, I think there's similar levels of play. Not everybody thinks that. There's a lot of different opinions out there, which is why I'm just waiting for the games. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to really call it till we see it, but perhaps we can talk to them first. Inbound is standing by next to Aggro.
I've got Bobby, or Inbound, the support here for Hype Unit. Bobby, you've played competitively on both console and PC. This is the first time that we're going to get a chance to see some cross-play in how the console teams stack up against the PC side. How confident are you in this team beating Flashpoint?
I'm really confident in our players. We're all like playing for like I don't know, 2 months on PC now, and I don't know. I'm excited to play against all the PC competition.
Do you think there's going to be a big step up or a big difference? I mean, this isn't an SPL team on the other side, but Flashpoint's looked very good and have a lot of competitive experience. Do you guys think that this is a match that you should feel confident or be favored in?
Yeah, I think we should feel confident in this one. I think SEL is pretty close to SML, maybe a slight edge to SML. They're used to the keyboards a little bit more than we are, so it's a slight advantage. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident against these guys.
You mentioned the keyboards. All of your team playing on keyboard and mouse, not controllers today. What led you to that decision?
It's just an advantage you get. All of us are going to play except Oboronic was planning on playing a controller, but he just ended up switching to PC on the last month or so.
All right, so you got your practice in there. I mean, you've played on both ends of the competition. Do you feel like this team is capable of not just winning here today, but moving on and playing some of the SPL teams later on in the week?
Yeah, I think we can play against the SPL teams. I think they definitely have an advantage. They've been playing just way longer than all of us, but I don't know. I think we can make some noise here.
It's certainly some noise on the docket, basically, for this Hype Unit team. Bobby, thank you very much. Good luck. And we'll throw it back to you guys on the desk.
Bobby always a little bit honest and a little bit more personable than I think some of our other folks. But Bobby coming out here kind of confident and saying, listen, yeah, we're going to win today. Later on, we'll be realistic. We're not a pro league team, but we'll see what happens. Down to play whatever game is given. But Bobby absolutely can. You can tell when these players are kind of hamming up for the camera. That guy thinks he can win.
This is a team that has to be respected. I like the fact that he says make some noise because you know they're going to bring some interesting strategies, whether it's picks and bans, their god selection, or whether it's their builds and how they're going to start off the game.
Well, that's something to think about that you got to bring home to the fans is that a lot of people have been watching the Pro League. We know that the Pro League is a little bit more louder than some of the other squads. So the Console League has its own meta. Metagame is dictated by the good players in the league and what happens there and part of the game. So obviously there's going to be picks that are just good in SMITE game, but there's also going to be picks that are good in the console world, and watching them kind of mix and match the collide of metas is going to be really interesting. Waiting across the way is going to be Flashpoint. And it's kind of all about this guy.
Yeah, I agree. Johnny, the jungler for this squad, has been basically the name we've always been highlighting because of his highlight plays. He's always been in the thick of things when he needs to, allowing his team to get a lot of these wins. They started off very hot to start off the split, going 6-1, but then losing 3 afterwards. They were able to bounce back very strong.
It's awesome to see him here. Now, the team is not complete. They do have Farrakrik had to stay home, so they will have a substitute. Sibi's going to move over to mid, and the substitute Chota will play over there in the solo lane. But for so many years, we've seen this team come through to LAN, and Johnny has not been able to make it. He's here, and he's next to Aggro. Let's talk to him.
All right, I've got Johnny, the jungler here for Flashpoint, joining me. Johnny, this is the first time Flashpoint's made it to LAN. How excited are you to finally be here?
I'm pretty excited,
I mean, you guys have been at the top of the SML for a long time, but you've had some problems getting to LAN and things like that. And now Farrakrik not here, but the rest of the squad here. Is that a big blow to you guys, not a Farrakrik?
I mean, yeah, of course, missing one player, isn't good, but we're pretty confident even without him.
I mean, this is, you were saying that this is your first time flying, just getting over here. Is this experience what you thought it would be so far?
Yeah, it's amazing being here, with you guys, and yeah, hope to come again here.
You've got a pretty solid opponent on the other side, though, Hype Unit. How much preparation have you done for this console team?
I mean, we watched some of their games, but we're pretty confident.
You in particular, I think, is one of the highlight members. You get a lot of hype, man, talking about the Kuang and some of these late game carries. Do you feel like you are the main carry of this team?
I mean, no one can carry 1v5. My team is doing an amazing job. But yeah, maybe some games I stand up a bit. But yeah.
Sometimes they give you the Kuang and it just kind of happens, right? Good luck, man. Really looking forward to seeing you play on LAN. We'll throw it back to you guys on the desk.
Maybe some games I stand up a bit. Johnny forever humble over there. Shout out to Johnny. Big deal. He is here, and I mean that sincerely. This is going to be a very big part of it. But unfortunately, Tully, if you asked me who the number 2 guy was, or sometimes the number 1 guy in the games, It's Farrakrick. That middle laner is really, really important to this Flashpoint squad. I mean, you've been in a competitive team. I'm going to ask you to lean on that player jersey in the background. Talk to me what it's like coming to LAN here and not having that mid laner.
That's going to be a big impact, not having somebody you've been practicing with, because the mid-jungle synergy is probably the most important synergy to have between any other pair inside your lanes. Now, switching between solo and mid, that's also kind of like not the most smooth transition. Like if you're going from solo to hunter or vice versa, that makes a little bit of sense. But going into the mid, now you're playing mages.
I think it kind of goes to what you were saying, that mid-jungle synergy is so important. Sibi and Dzoni play the right side of the jungle together all the time. That solo jungle synergy is there. So Sibi switching over to the mid, it's more like, hey, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. So might be a step back from Sibi playing over the solo lane, transitioning to the mid. But I think for Dzoni to be comfortable having a mid laner that he's used to be playing with, you think that works?
I think it could definitely go a long way. He's a man of few words during that interview, but I think that he's going to let his game do the talking. As long as that he can get a comfortable pick, the Susano, the Bakasuras, anything that can hard carry, I think that Flashpoint will be A-okay.
Very excited for the first time ever. Cross-play interleague. This is nuts. I'm very excited. The defending world champions, essentially hype unit of their own respective league, are going up against Flashpoint, one of the top teams on the minor league circuit right now. Very excited. I don't think that Flashpoint are going to get Kuang. Hype unit, they have to have done their homework, and if Kuang isn't banned, do you think it's a mistake, Toli?
I don't think it's a mistake, and I'll tell you why. Because Hype Unit are baiting Flashpoint to pick up the Kuang. It's a great late game hyper carry, but it's not too strong in the early game. It's hard to defend your own buffs. So if Flashpoint do take the bait, I'm expecting Hype Unit to go for a hyper aggressive early start.
Which is Hype Unit's style anyway. They like to hit the gas. They like to get going. I mean, early today, Hype Unit, that's their name for a reason. I'm walking through the studio, they're bumping music, they're out here just ready to go. You know, this is the team that they want to make some noise, they're doing it. So, you know, going for the hyper aggressive strategy, not necessarily a poor thing. But on the other side, you know,
is Freya.
You're giving Flashpoint what has won them games.
This is a strategy Hype Unit already were expecting. Between banning away the Chronos and the Muzen Cobb, the next best go-to is the Freya. I think that Griffin should be relatively comfortable, but then there's always that safety factor now that Kespainify is hovering over the Jing, which I do expect to be locked in. It's not necessarily the hard counter just because you can agility away from the banish. It's more about once you do get poked out, you'll just utilize that passive to get back to lane and not miss out on any farm and squeeze in some back camps in between.
Certainly, this is what the conversation is, because if you're Flashpoint and Kuang isn't banned, you assume you're being baited. So Jormungandr will be the selection. Prioritizing that pick over there for the solo laner, I think, is absolutely the right call. Of course, Jorm could go mid if you're looking at zeros. And of course, Sibi is playing the mid lane.
So that makes actual sense because he's had experience in the solo lane. He just has to build it differently.
And to be fair, it's a completely different playstyle.
I mean, he loves diving the backline anyway. The laning phase might be different, sure, but I think the team fights are going to be relatively the same for Sibi.
Interesting. So a lot of ambiguity here for Flashpoint in the early stages of the draft.
Bravery always prevails.
Erlang Shen. Shout out to John Finch. He'll be selected here second for Hype Unit.
Wait, Finch is selected here?
Oh, no. Finch just has a slamming Erlang Shen impression. Zhong, however, one of oBoronic's kind of go-tos during the regular season, and I alluded to the difference between our metas here. We've seen Zhong notably in the solo lane, but oBoronic has played him in the mid lane in this console league to great success. So right away we see a little bit of a difference, and man, this is where you get up and you start clapping. Flashpoint have the Kuang. It's the Dzoni show.
They're going to prove to Hype, you know, it's like, listen, you gotta ban this away from us. So let's see what Dzoni is all about. This is the true ultimate test, his Kuang at LAN.
Big point. This is Johnny's first time on LAN, and that's a big deal. Totally, you've been there, and we both watched that interview. And I don't think I'm alone in saying Dzoni seems a little bit nervous. Do you think it'll bleed into the play?
I think he's just more focused on the game than actual, like, thinking about talking about the other team at this point. He's like, all right, what do I need to do to get this W? It's a long road ahead for not only Flashpoint, but also Hype Unit.
Hype Unit. afraid of the healers. No Afro and no Hell, they say, in the secondary selection phase. And then Flashpoint banning out 2 of the junglers. No Zerket nor no Arachne. So Flashpoint looking for some of the burst damage, particularly dot-based burst damage. Those characters deal without Kuang relatively well, so keeping them out of the game is definitely going to be a good look. And Hype Unit, healers have devastated console players for years. We like to complain about healing meta on the PC side, but if you ever watched the Console League Season 2, Season 3?
Oh, yeah. A lot of healers there for sure. But speaking of a healer, Terra being locked in for Flashpoint. Not the most healing in the world, but a good amount of healing to
Very
be respected, where you do have to build a little bit anti-healing. I'm not building Cursed Ankh against the Terra, but I might pick up a Pestilence.
Well, Terra's that mid-fight heal. Sure, you can back up and heal on the Monolith, but it's rarely used in the raw sense, and it's more the ultimate we go in and we're healing ourselves back up. It's that when it matters healing for the most part. So, Flashpoint, waiting for Hype Unit to figure out their composition. Freya, Erlang, and Zhong so far. So, Erlang, honestly, I think will wind up in the hands of the support player. We see a Sun Wukong that's likely to go to Wolves. And a jungle selection for KP. Layers of Death going the Morrigan. I think it's a Morrigan jungle.
Interesting. Can it be something else?
It could
probably not. It's probably Erlang support, Sun Wukong solo, and Morrigan jungle. I agree with you.
Yeah, you could sneak Wukong into the jungle, but knowing this team, I think it is more relevant.
What if
Okay.
it's Sun Wukong support,
Sure.
Zhong solo,
Okay.
Morrigan mid, and Erlang's jungle?
I think that's plausible as well. Looking at what Hype Unit has done this season, Erlang has been a go-to character for Layers of Death, so that's certainly a choice here. Medusa locked in for Flashpoint. That's going to be the last pick. So double Hunter composition. No Fafnir of note. These comps look pretty good, though. Johnny gets his out Kuang. This is Johnny on the spot now, and you know, I gotta say, this is a best of 3. Letting the Ao Kuang go is an experiment. That's a tough one, though.
It's hard to have a throwaway game in the best of 3, right? Well, like, there's been so many best of 5s in the SPL, not many in the console world or in the SML. So these teams are ready for the best of 3s, but double Hunter without Fafnir with Shogun's Kusari could still work, I think.
Very interested in this poll, to be honest with you. Hype Unit versus Flashpoint. Who's going to win? That's the question I directly ask you at home. Let us know on Twitter and everywhere else. Because, frankly, I've seen it split down the middle. I have been pretty high on Hype Unit coming into this set. I think they are better than people seem to think. What are you feeling, Tully?
I'm feeling this could go either way. Without Ferrocrit, you never really know how Flashpoint are going to be feeling. You might have to give it to Hype Unit. Who knows?
That Ao Kuang, though. That's
Yeah.
going to be a big, big deal. They do have tools to deal with it. We see the Zhong in the middle lane. That's certainly very strong there. The Morrigan brings dots as well. Will the dots be enough to take it? The first crossplay game. Let's get into it for MSI.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Totally. Let's kick the MSI off right here, right now. Hyping it up against Flashpoint. Finch and Taco here on the call. And of course, somehow Hype Unit missed the memo. Maybe we didn't send it to their hotel, but they've let Johnny play this out Kuang. Taco, is that enough? Is it over here already, or have they drafted enough answers to try and slow him down?
Sorry, Finch. I'm rubbing my eyes, trying to see if when I open them, I'll wake up, because Johnny on AO clearly can't be reality.
Yeah, but yet it's happening right here before all of us, right? I mean, we talk about all the time, if you all follow the SML, which you absolutely should, we talk about how strong this guy is on it, and not just this phase, but in Season 5 as well. Very nearly upset the top team by playing this Ao Kuang so well, so it is very scary. He has a really, really big impact on it, but there's a lot of things that are different. You heard them talk about this on the desk. We have Chota in for them in the solo lane. Sibi moved over from the middle lane. They weren't able to get Ferrocrit here, so Flashpoint aren't quite at full strength, and maybe that would mitigate this Ao Kuang some.
Farkrick not being here is definitely going to have a little bit of an impact against Flashpoint. Have to keep in mind that even if Flashpoint are familiar with Chota, he's still not their natural team member, and probably isn't as familiar with that solo lane either. And Sibi having to flex as well into an unconventional position for himself could definitely introduce some issues that I think Hype Unit are trying to exploit early on. His Layers already looking to play aggressive against Johnny.
Potentially could have been a good start, but they couldn't quite catch him. Johnny is able to reposition, and so if Hype Unit will fall back, they don't get beads or anything like that for their trouble either. But Hype Unit have a nice draft, I feel like, against the Kuang. The Zhong does feel pretty good against him, can catch him outside that water illusion, and has a ton of burst damage, as Choda's brought down quite low on the right-hand side. How do you think about the draft of Hype Unit into the Kuang in particular?
This was definitely planned from Hype Unit. They knew exactly what they were after, and probably exactly what they'd be playing against. Jormungandr for Chota, and Jorm in general being such a heavy priority right now for a lot of competitive play. Just has so much versatility in his kit, but right now this map is all Hype Unit, and Layers continues the pressure, getting a double kill to start the match.
Sibi and Dzoni both go down. Layers on the board already with 2 kills. And my man, whatever name he goes by, Chaotic Purpose, LayersSlays, whatever, Layers of Death, whatever it is, he always has this kind of impact in his games. And there was some question, right? Could he still have that same impact against these minor league teams? And so far, he clearly can.
This is a Hype Unit, though, that people seem to think of him as a console roster, but in all honesty, these are players that have all been playing on PC throughout the vast majority of this year and the last one.
Inbound's been in the SPL before, right? I think it was on LG for a little while. So you're not wrong at all. I mean, this is a team that certainly has familiarity on keyboard and mouse, right? They're not caught unawares here. This is a team that shows up all the time. And it's not just Layers. Wolves is the best solo laner on console, probably even just the best player. And I imagine a lot of that skill is going to translate to him here. And right now, he's giving Chota a hard time. They gave oGryph Freya in the duo lane. I mean, a lot of things looking good here for this Hype Unit team.
This is the exact start the Hype Unit were after. Dzoni still going to be able to successfully defend Chota's blue buff, however, much to, I think, Inbound and Wolves' dismay. But look, Finch, we talk about this AO, we talk about Dzoni and Flashpoint all the time, but the fact is, unless he's able to perform it here today, none of that previous history with his Kuang and its invincibility is really going to matter.
That's a great point, man. I mean, you don't get any points for what you've done before. None of that will factor in here now. And Hype Unit, in like they say on the desk, a 3-game set. You don't get a ton of extra opportunities. You don't get any do-overs. If it doesn't work for them here, this set might already be out of reach. And in a set with those highest stakes, they still felt confident letting Dzoni get the Kuang. I'm confident this team didn't forget or overlook it. That they knew that they were going to value it, and they just said that we can beat it.
Layers, though, about to get turned upon, trying to escape right now, but it's just too overwhelming. Dzoni gonna gobble that Erlang right back up. And a response on the board now for Flashpoint.
And that kill couldn't have gone to a better spot either. Get this Kuang for Dzoni off to a good start, despite the spill he took earlier. Now he's the one hitting level 5 ahead of Layers. Just like that, the experience now favoring Dzoni. Yet again, Hype Unit had a good start, but they've got to make sure they hold on. Flashpoint are not going to go away for free, though this could help if they could lock down Fusify, but a nice dash through the monolith gets him out.
Still a little bit too slippery there for Fusify, but hey, the important stance, though, is the fact that Flashpoint were able to even make a response this early on. Traditionally speaking, AO not going to exactly have the greatest early game, especially not after having been double kill first-blooded by the enemy team's jungle. But Hype Unit have got to remember, for as much early game pressure as they were able to establish initially, they can't expect to maintain that if they get a little bit too careless. And I do feel like that extension in the mid lane might have been a little bit too much from Layers.
Well, Taco, I do want to talk a little bit about oBoronic. The Morrigan was a point of contention on the desk. You see, I'm thinking that maybe it was even in the jungle for Layers, but it ended up going to oBoronic here in the middle lane, as the blue buff does indeed get taken away. But he starts off with the cooldown boots, doesn't go with any blessings or anything like that at all to get started. Do you like this start here for Morrigan in the middle lane?
Love this start from oBoronic. He's just trying to get the pressure going early on up against Sibi, not trying to allow this Hunter to efficiently farm. And now Wolves and Bobby actually going to be in a whole world of their own troubles as the World War ultimate going to come through from Chota, and Flashpoint do successfully strip away Hype Unit's blue buff.
They end up trading them then back and forth after what Inbound was able to do up near the top side, but that was the aggression you were just talking about, and they couldn't quite get it to work for any kills, but at least taking away the buff on the right-hand side. oBoronic with these boots, man, rushing that movement speed, which Morrigan works so well with. That's why we see her get bumbas so often, is that extra movement speed is just so critical for her. It makes a ton of sense.
Plus, oBoronic knows that this isn't Sibi's traditional role.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anything unconventional that oBoronic can whip out to throw Sibi a little bit off his normal trail, I think could bode really well for Hype Unit here. I think there's already a decent bit of confusion as well coming out of Flashpoint, just maybe not having expected this Hype Unit aggression.
Layers once again taking the 1v1 with Johnny in the jungle. Inbound's on his way to try and tip the scales in their favor. Johnny might have been caught on the wrong side of town. Inbound's the one that gets the kill credit. And now all of a sudden Fusify, who's just rotated over to try and help his friend, might be caught out as well.
Fusify doesn't have the dash available just yet. Gonna get knocked up by Layers and cleaned up by Layers to finish things off. There's just been an unstoppable barrage of pressure so far from Hype Unit, and Layers non-stop leading the charge.
He absolutely is, but I do want to point out, did you see Inbound's player cam after that play? He was definitely excited and animated, and that is his personality. He'd be like that no matter what. I mean, even if these guys were sitting around playing Uno, I'm sure Inbound would get excited, but this is a team with confidence. They really think they can win this, and he's the engine for a lot of it.
Hype Unit's gonna pop off for every single kill they get today. Any objective kills they get, even. I could see Bobby going hype for Griff right now, even bringing it to Kespainify over there in that dual lane. The Freya Jing Wei matchup not exactly panning out too well so far for Kespainify, but you have to remember, without the Devil Ghost being finished, without that sustain actually coming through, but hold up on the thought about sustain.
Already the ultimates come out from Sibi and Layers and execute Threshold. Still goes up into the air, but it's Sibi who gets the kill credit. Inbound will hang out on the cloud for a little while longer, but Flashpoint have gotten what they came here for, a blue buff stolen and the kill.
Can't expect any part of this map to be considered safe right now if you're Hype Unit. Sure, you've gotten the early jump over Flashpoint, but...
Yeah, especially not one they've contested already, right? Like, they've already been there.
That too, Fish, definitely might serve as a friendly reminder that, hey, we've got your blue buff timer, and we're going to show up for it every single time. And Hype Unit now, that's the second time that we've seen a decent punish against either Inbound, Layers, or Wolves.
Fusify brought down to half HP, and so oBoronic wants to get the party started here with the Zhong, but it's not enough. In fact, Johnny moving into the recall Demon Sleep for an execute, but Meditation comes out, moves him out of execute threshold, and Layers returns the favor onto Sibi.
Sibi not able to create enough space to get away. oBoronic trying to utilize some of this invisibility off the Morrigan. Play aggressive here. Kespainify could be in some trouble. Gonna have to agility away off the banish, but you're right, Finch. Flashpoint just can't step in.
Fusify's done as well, but Johnny wants to play cleanup crew. First one down, Inbound. Next on the list is oBoronic, but can't quite get to him. Just barely survives and gets the Morrigan back out of there. But another back and forth skirmish here around the middle lane. But the ones who were invading the red buff, that was Hype Unit.
Johnny just didn't have enough mana to continue that engagement there. It was really all down to whether or not Kespainify would have any luck with confirming that red buff for Flashpoint, and that Persistent Gust just unable to do enough. And I love this from Hype Unit though, because it's very similar to what we see from a lot of our PC teams. And again, I can't stress it enough that if we're expecting an upset, I think that this is the set to look for.
I agree. This is probably the best chance that Console has, which isn't to say they don't have a chance throughout the rest of the day. I just think Hype Unit is the best team on Console right now, so this is them kind of leading out with their heaviest hitters first. And then on the opposite side, Flashpoint is, of course, as we said, a bit weakened without Faircrick. I mean, this is obviously still a very strong team, don't get me wrong, but I mean, this matchup it's already living up to the billing as Chota goes into the ultimate. Layers gets knocked up first, but Chota knows he has a bunch of backup in the form of Fusify and Johnny to try and help him out. Way on the back side is Inbound, trying to keep his team alive, but they've left Wolves to the Wolves, and he's been gobbled up.
Flashpoint are just causing so much separation now for Hype Unit. oBoronic's gonna make the rotation in, but Johnny's gonna take down Inbound the second that he lands from that somersault cloud.
2 for 0 now, and Flashpoint, the ones that get to decide where the action happens next. oBoronic wants Fusify, but the Terra a little bit too tanky. Makes it out of there A-okay, but Flashpoint can't take this pressure anywhere right now on the map. They're just kind of stuck here on the right side, so even though it's a 2 for 0, it doesn't hurt Hype Unit that much.
Honestly, Finch, that was all just a punish from Flashpoint onto Hype Unit for one more time, just a slight overextension into Chota's blue buff. As soon as that World Serpent ultimate starts to get channeled, that should have been Layers' green light to get out of there. Instead, kind of greeds it out for the last hit of the blue buff and winds up baiting his team into their own death, essentially, because they're all forced trying to peel him out.
And this is Hype Unit living and dying by their aggression as Inbound's in a lot of trouble in the middle lane. Sibi's the one that grabs the kill credit. Fusify low as well, though. oBoronic takes him down, and they're not done just yet. Way on the back line, Sibi in trouble. A double for oBoronic. Layers not to be outdone, finds a kill of his own, and now Dzoni left isolated with no water illusion and can out DPS. A double for Layers, 4 for 0. Hype Unit answer back.
That Wolves rotation could not have been more critical there. Wolves not only cuts off Sibi, but also catches that lacerate dash so Sibi doesn't safely get away underneath that T1 tower. If Sibi actually lives there, he has a chance to back to base, he has a chance to come back in, and this Gold Fury possibly never even happens. Instead, Flashpoint just get absolutely 180'd off of this Zhong.
And this is exactly what Flashpoint couldn't do with their 2 for 0 win right. That's why where these fights happen sometimes can be almost as important as where the direction the fight goes in, like in whose favor the fight goes. There just wasn't that same opportunity for Flashpoint on right as there was for Hype Unit on left. And now, Hype Unit have established themselves the first real lead of the game, nearly 4,000 gold out in front.
That pick on the Inbound just baited Flashpoint into thinking they had a lot more damage than what was truly in store for them. Inbound going down, sure, it hurts for Hype Unit, but have to remember, as a Sun Wukong support, he's not necessarily there to be the peel master. He might just be another friendly meat shield for Hype Unit to utilize and really have Wolves kind of just shine.
Yeah, I mean, that is often how Inbound plays, using his health bar as a resource. Something you hear a lot of the times. And oh my goodness, Kespainify. Perhaps he has not gotten the memo that Freya does a lot of damage. That's not the fight for you. He makes his way out of there.
I think oGryph just wasn't able to drop that first auto off of the Valkyrie's Discretion in time. Because it looked like he cast it in time.
Yeah.
And you can still hit Jing when she's channeling that airstrike. Maybe just unable to get it up in time. 9 turns Blessing, gonna pull the beads out of Sibi, and now it's a turnaround from Flashpoint.
That was a sick initiation, but a better response from Sibi with the ultimate from the Medusa. That stuns 2, but a 2-man banish might turn things back around in Hype Unit's favor, though. Flashpoint make it back to the Tier 1 tower. Everything's A-okay for now, but they look like they want a little bit more. Though Chota can't quite get into range, and I think Hype Unit have fallen back.
Not sure this is a fight that Flashpoint really want to tangle with just yet, though. oGryph, having just recently forced out Kespainify's airstrike, means that if Kespainify's rotating in, he's not going to have the greatest survivability possible and probably can't play nearly as aggressive with that Jing as oGryph can on this Freya based off of his damage alone.
Dzoni invades the jungle. Layers is here, and Inbound might loop around, but Dzoni has backup. Sibi and Fusify there, so nothing more comes from it. I want to take a chance to talk about some of these builds, though, Taco. Double Pythag's piece, we don't often see that because when they're together, they're not going to stack, but I guess they're so far away that maybe this makes some sense. And the Bumbas there picked up for the Morrigan as well. This early on in the build, I mean, a lot of interesting stuff already.
An insanely fast Bumbas rush for sure from oBoronic, but I can justify it when you go book a Thoth, your first item. That's going to be such a raw power spike alone that oBoronic can kind of afford to prioritize the movement speed that Boombas provides, because that's really all that you're after with Morrigan on this Boombas. That 35% makes a massive difference, especially when you go into that Invis form and are looking for utility set up on the back line.
It's a ton, and her burst will certainly still be there. Besides, oBoronic oftentimes will be transforming anyway and borrowing from whoever he switches to, so a lot ends up working in his favor.
I'd have to imagine that's usually going to be Layers. That
into the Erlang Shen.
At least early on, we haven't really had too many opportunities to see oBoronic go for the transformation just yet.
I think we've seen a Zhong from him once too, yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, he's got some really strong options here, whether he wants to go even into Johnny's AO, for example.
Sure. Turn that out Kuang into an asset for the team, perhaps. Sibi, that's a great job with the ultimate. Also gave us the CC immunity to cut out oBoronic looking for a stun. I think that's what gets him out of there.
Almost pretty spicy there, though, from Inbound. The reason why he charges Sibi there, even though he knows that the Medusa is going to be able to pick up the red buff, is because he wants to force that dash. oBoronic had so much movement speed. We all saw him zipping right up through that corridor, trying to catch Sibi out with the stun. And had it connected, well, Sibi, honestly, probably expected something was up since he turned into the Petrify almost right away off of Inbound's aggression there. But it's the fact that Hype Unit can even force a Petrify out of the Medusa in that circumstance.
Pyromancer now under siege by Flashpoint, and Wolves can't make his way in there, so a nice answer back by FP to try and keep this game close. Yes, Hype Unit have the lead for now, but that won't last forever. And Johnny, slowly and steadily, is building this out Kuang up more and more. Things could potentially get scary for them in the late game if they don't slow this down now, as Layers takes about 40% of his health.
This could be big trouble for Layers, actually. Without those beats for the next couple of minutes here, Johnny is bound to be lurking inside of Hype Unit's jungle, probably hoping for a 1v1 boxing opportunity against this Erlang, because if it comes down to Erlang versus AO Finch, I think most people are usually going to be on the side of the AOs, especially with the sustain that he provides. Even through the 9 turns blessing, typically not enough to keep an Erlang alive.
That is interesting. I'm almost wondering if it's going to end up being oBoronic and Johnny, though, as the ones in the late game kind of battling this out. Because right now, oBoronic is the lead for Hype Unit. He's up 2 levels over Sibi, and he's just had a monster early game so far. 3-0-5 on this Morrigan, to the point where he felt comfortable with the early Bumbas. Maybe he'll be the one trying to go toe-to-toe, or maybe not directly fighting him, but in terms of impact, you know, to be those two that were measured.
Hey, silent but deadly. It's oBoronic's forte, for sure.
Sure.
Usually all eyes are going to be on Wolves or Layers, but right now all eyes are on Sibi as he's getting demolished in the mid lane.
Evaporated, gone without a trace. Johnny wanted to try and follow up, but there was no one to follow because that's how quickly Sibi ended up falling. Chota goes in his ultimate. They have a chance to catch out oBoronic. who transforms. Kespainify makes it a 1-for-1. Wolves can't quite lock down Johnny, who worms his way out of there, and it ends up being an even fight.
Even oGryph looking for Johnny after the fact with that Valkyrie's Discretion. A really aggressive Freya ultimate drop there, but Flashpoint in the end still unable to hold on to their T1 tower. So even though Hype Unit only found Sibi, the fact that they were able to open up the map pressure just a little bit more so is going to make it all the more difficult for Johnny on this AO as well.
And can I say, I think Sibi's done a good job in the middle lane. There have been a couple times, I think, where maybe, you know, the mid lane instincts you develop over, you know, countless games are not quite there. But, I mean, stepping into this role for the team when they couldn't get Fair Crick and the team thought they were going to have him, at least based on social media and some of the stuff they were saying, definitely I think he's done a good job here so far. He's clearly been the target for Hype by Hype Unit as well, and holding on and staying close to relevant.
Take whatever advantages you can get, and for Hype Unit, if it means trying to just strong-arm Sibi out of the mid lane, go for it. It's been working out decently so far. The Zhong Erlang combination has been fairly potent. Chota, in fact, could be in trouble here. Doesn't have that World Serpent available to try and get away.
Yeah, so he's a sitting duck. Layers grabs that kill quite easily as he and Wolves bait him out that time, and that's something where Chota's got to make sure he's a little bit more mindful. Jormungandr immediately transitions from this unkillable tank into a sitting duck when he doesn't have the ult and a little bit more awareness.
Oni Fury on the board for a potential pull at a Hype Unit. Gotta keep in mind, Chota's not gonna be around for another 20 seconds or so, and with Sibi's Petrify having just been forced by Layers in mid, this is prime picking for an objective fight now for Hype Unit.
Yeah, no one's got to tell Griff. My man moved there right away. Griffin Slays, every name he goes by, he is a catalyst for this team as well. Often goes, I feel, underspoken, but certainly deserves any credit. As Fusify stunned on the entry, Hype Unit have dropped the objective. They want the kills. Fusify falls first, banished onto Kespainify, and the whole team waits on him, but only Jing can airstrike in that way to make her way out of there. But what about Johnny? I don't think Layers knows where he is, and he's made it out as well.
Layers couldn't decide between heading towards the tower or heading back into the jungle. Meanwhile, Wolves has just been split pushing his brains out over there in solo. T2 tower gonna follow. Gold lead is being opened up now for Hype Unit. And oBoronic not even worried about the Oni Fury. He's worried about Johnny.
Hype Unit grabbed the Oni Fury, but in the backline, Sibi gets oBoronic. He goes a little bit too deep on his own and can't quite find the kill. Chota at the very least wants to keep this chase going, but what about the rest of FP? It looks like they recognize there's not much there, so instead they'll group and maybe even try and push down tier 1.
oBoronic being out for 40 seconds though is a pretty long time. Flashpoint trying to see just mid T1 tower, but Wolves having rotated in could be a little bit too much to handle.
Chota goes in aggressively, doesn't have the ultimate yet again. Wolves, though, gets his life traded out solo for solo, but Johnny has found his way to Inbound. Horrific forces oGryph up into the air with the Valkyrie's Discretion. Even with Layers there, Aegis has to be used to keep him alive, but Layers takes too many shots. Kespainify hits nearly everything. Johnny goes in, but the Onkile passive, I think that was enough. It silenced him, and Layers turned it around.
Beautiful banish there by oGryph to save the life of his jungler. Had it not been for the banish on top of the Onkile proc passive, I don't think that Johnny would have, or I don't think Johnny would have died there. I think he might have actually pulled it off despite not having enough mana to actually opt for the execute onto Layers there. but still a complete halt forced now against Flashpoint, and they were starting to develop some decent momentum off of those staggered death timers from Hype Unit.
But what a good start to the mid-season invitational though, Taco. What more could you ask? Console and Minor League both showing up in our very first game. I don't think you could want any more from these teams, and it's gonna get even more interesting because we haven't really gotten to see oGryph have quite the impact that I think that we're going to throughout this game. Hasten Ring now finished, and Kespainify could be in some trouble, but makes his way around those rocks. But he turns around to try and take the 1v1. Airstrike forced out defensively, and that's exactly what I mean. That Freya going to start to have more and more of an impact here soon.
Surprised to see Hype Unit not opt for the dive there, though, against Kespainify. Has to be just because of the fact that they just don't have enough vision.
On where everyone else is, yeah.
And are undecided as to where the rest of Flashpoint might be, but right now it looks as though Hype Unit, they just want to take care of all the T2 towers still standing on this map, and no one from Flashpoint really in position to do anything about it.
No, they might look for Wolves here instead. They've got the 3v1 in mid, but they're going to lose the tier 2 tower. I don't even know if killing Wolves is an equal trade, though they certainly will gobble him up. Dzoni gets the kill credit right where you want that to go, but now it's a Phoenix in left. Kespainify dies too. They don't have a minion wave here, though, so I don't know how much they can threaten it, and the rest of Flashpoint are on their way.
Hype Unit is just trying to all in here, but they got to be careful. If they wipe, Flashpoint can look for the fire.
They're going to take down left side Phoenix, but what about the disengage on the back end? Inbound up on the somersault. Cloud has a nice view, but Chota has already removed oBoronic from the equation. Inbound low in the back line without many escape options. It's up to oGryph and Layers to make their way out of here and stay alive.
Sibi still trying to get chased to inbound. Meanwhile, Johnny hot in the trail of oGryph and Layers. Layers actually going to find the slow into, or Johnny finally finds the slow onto Layers, but still, oGryph self-banished just in case. Might have been expecting Fusify to have
this is enough, though.
Another dash for the chase, but you're right, Finch. It looks as though Flashpoint, they don't even mind that they didn't find more than just oBoronic because Fire Giant's still on the board, taken.
I think Hype Unit did enough to not lose any more lives. Yeah, they're going to lose the Pyromancer here, but I don't know if Flashpoint can feel comfortable going for the FG in this spot. They will, though, see if they can bait in Hype Unit. That's exactly what Inbound was, a bit of a sitting duck, but he makes it out without even getting the Magai's cloak procced, so that's great. He's able to still stick around and play defensive.
A little bit awkward on the timing there from Fusify. Was hoping to strip that bad guy's cloak proc from Inbound, but Chota will take care of it after the fact anyway. Sentry Ward Vision still established right now, though, for Hype Unit on that FG. And surprisingly enough, Flashpoint, I really thought that with the AO, they might have had a little bit more time to actually burst down that Fire Giant, but just did not seem super comfortable knowing that Hype Unit would be able to rotate back in and contest.
I think it's so multifaceted. I don't think that Flashpoint should stop going to the Outquang if they lose this game, which it's not out of reach. But Layers got so much early presence off Erlang and this Freya, they gave up too much, I think, in that picks and bans phase. And it's made their job way harder than it has to be. But Inbound gonna take the opportunity to back. Flashpoint aren't forcing the fight at FG yet, so they've got time.
Have to remember, though, that Flashpoint are the ones running the double Guardian setup in comparison to Hype Unit, where if you're expecting Hype Unit to take the lead, early game to mid is going to be their time to shine.
Sure.
Because they've got the Wukong, they've got Wolves on this Zhong, but what they don't have is a very consistent front line, and that's something that can come back to haunt them.
Fire Giant now started by Hype Unit Taco. Fusify in already. Sibi's ultimate already on cooldown, and Johnny, the target, way in the back line. He manages to get away with the Water Illusion. But Chota still has something to say in this engagement. He comes to the back line to try and give Sibi some backup. That's the Aegis forced out from him. Layers, undeterred, takes the Medusa scalp and moves on. Inbound falls as well, or rather gets a kill, and oGryph finds Chota. So far a 3 for 0 in favor of Hype Unit. Layers with a double divine at this point, and Flashpoint reeling after a huge fight from Hype.
Wait, Flashpoint have 4 members dead right now, and I don't think that Hype Unit cares about sieging the Fire Giant or the Phoenixes or anything. They're looking for the end.
They are. They're moving right towards the Titan to try and end things right here, right now, and score first blood for Console up against the minor league. Flashpoint have to rely on Kespainify with the Odysseus bow to get it done, and it might be enough. The health bars are low from Hype Unit, and Taco, they can't end. Flashpoint, hold on somehow, thanks to Kespainify.
Close but no cigar, and Wolves about to be in even more trouble because Kespainify utilizing that Jing pass and get back into the action, gonna agility forward,
wants more.
And he's gonna find more. oGryph with the double kill, possibly even a triple on oBoronic, but Inbound to shut down Kespainify once and for all with a nice Tiger Stun.
Finally, the turnaround comes through, but that was huge from Kespainify. Did so much more, I think, than you could have expected in that situation. And I've been wanting to talk about his build all game anyway, because we so often see Jingweis go into crits, because obviously with the explosive bolts, you're going to get some anyway. But he's gone this kin-size Odibo route, and I really do think that additional bouncing really helped out in that defense. Do you like this build that Kespainify's gone?
Love it, especially for the Sun Wukong, because even without Blink being a heavy priority for Inbound, since it's pretty much only Wolves or Layers that you have to worry about the Blink coming through from. But it's just that having that Odysseus bow kind of proc spread from even the clone when he goes into that Somersault Cloud, it's like you're almost always getting some form of utility out of this item. And I also think that the outright attack speed is something that he's going to need if he plans on trying to outbox a member like Layers.
Hype unit now, Taco, have to keep their heads on straight if they want to grab this win. They go for the end, and they can't get it. Kespainify single-handedly pushes them back and even finds a couple cleanup kills on the back end. They're still in the driver's seat, but they have to remember it. They have to be able to play as cleanly as they've done for 26 minutes.
That felt like player inexperience, though.
Going for that
Hype
end?
unit assumed that they could end there, because had Inbound actually been full health, I give that to them. But without a Wukong unable to tank the Titan or tank the autos coming out of Kespainify, it was a little bit far-fetched for Hype unit, I think, to look for that end there. If they played it safe, we'd be looking at a Hype unit with Fire Giant instead right now. So I have to wonder if that could wind up being a little bit of a team regret on that shot call. But I do respect the commitment from Hype unit. It shows that this team is unanimous.
Now it's time for Flashpoint to try and put that second win they were given to work around the FG. Wolves' ultimate has already been expended, but so has Sibi's and Fusify's as well, so that might be a small win for Hype unit. Even Choda's ultimate forced out as well, so this could be a big fight for them, but not if they lose Wolves this early. Choda is the one that claims his life. Sibi, even with the Valkyrie's discretion, is able to keep moving forward. Johnny comes in and finds Layers underneath the tier 2. Griff in trouble as well. Johnny with a double kill on the out Kuang in the late game, and Hype unit, they might have let this one start to slip away. Flashpoint are right back in it.
This is getting dangerous now, Finch. oBoronic and Inbound looking to put a stop to Johnny. Inbound gonna actually end up bringing down the AO, but now all of Flashpoint knows exactly where Hype unit are at, and they're looking to pick them apart.
This was not the call by any means here, Taco, and suddenly they've kicked the door wide open. But for Flashpoint, they no longer have anything to worry about pushing down this right side lane, and we're 15 seconds away from Wolves respawning to try and join Inbound. This should at least be a Phoenix on the right-hand side, if not more, Taco.
Choda's going to be teleporting right back in here as well. Ward having just been placed by Flashpoint, but this right Phoenix is already melting for Hype unit. Inbound trying to do what he can, but it's just not enough. 4 members strong from Flashpoint. It's going to end up sealing the deal on this right Firebird. And now Flashpoint, they have all the time in the world to reset, spend some of that gold, continue to boost up this double Hunter composition now. But I'm really just looking at the front line.
Yes. You already nailed it earlier when you said these Guardians were going to be the difference maker in the late game, and that's why we pay the big bucks, I assume. I mean, Choda and Fusify were such a front line for this team right now. They're so beefy, and there's no one on Hype unit who can match that at this point. Wolves gets deleted in that fight way too soon, and that was with them having the ultimate advantage. Flashpoint burned 3 ultimates at the start of that fight.
It's just risk versus reward, and that shot call to try and end the game before, I guess, this AO composition could really start to become a problem. But Hype unit might have just risked a little bit too much for the possibility to end there. And now I do think it's going to be rather difficult to try and deal with a double Hunter composition when those Hunters are Jingwei and Medusa.
Well, we talked about this being the potential storyline earlier on, but now I'm looking at oBoronic and Johnny, and who could have more impact in the next few fights. His Fire Giant is already down to half HP, but Flashpoint relinquish it for now. They know they can't afford to try and start this fight. They want to bait in Hype unit early, but Hype unit won't overstep.
Hold up a second though, Choda still taking some of those enhanced Fire Giant shots. Have to keep in mind that FG at that 30-minute mark just took over into enhanced territory, so Hype unit do stand a little bit of a better chance now in terms of contesting the objective.
All ultimates are available. Still no beads yet for Dzoni. Aegis for Sibi still a few seconds away. A little bit longer on oBoronic, but Fusify has been caught out by the Freya banish. Still has the dash and is able to reposition, but some nice free poke. Hype Unit will never say no to that. And now our Fire Giant's dance begins. What was once a game that was clearly in Hype Unit's favor with a chance to end has come right back to parity. It really is balanced on a knife edge now.
See, where Hype Unit took off in this game was keeping that pressure constant. And when they weren't able to end, and they also simultaneously weren't able to take over the Fire Giant, they couldn't keep that snowball pressure going. It just came to a dead halt off of Kespainify, essentially force resetting the map. And that gave Flashpoint enough time to, well, now try and take over.
Inbound goes through first. That is the 72 transformations on cooldown, so he loses some of his safety and initiation there. Chota responds by going into the Whirlworm ultimate and trying to push back Hype Unit, but they want to try and group up around Wolves' ultimate. He has decided to recall demons, and Sibi is the early target, but they can't quite get him though. Dzoni is able to find the execute, so it's 1-for-1 solo for mid laner so far. Chota falls as well to oGryph, but Dzoni comes right back in. Griffin to the skies, but can't save Inbound. Layers low as well. Fusify gets him a double for the Terra, and it's just oGryph left. He's got plenty of damage on this Freya though. He steps forward to try and bring back some damage of his own. Even finds the two-man banish. It's just not enough. DSI for Flashpoint.
oGryph did everything in his power there to try and salvage this match for Hype Unit, but unfortunately for the guys in black and blue, it's looking like a defeat here for game number 1 up against Flashpoint Finch.
Wow, what a big play in that last fight. And at a certain point, Hype Unit, it just felt like didn't quite have enough. I wonder if this Sun Wukong in the late game, if that's what's hindering them to some extent. They don't have anyone who can really do the initiation for the team and peel for them. But Flashpoint absolutely will be the ones who grab this game as long as they juggle this aggro correctly. They end up losing Fusify. Doesn't matter either way. Flashpoint come away with the game 1 win.
And Finch, I can't help but mention it, but that AO became a massive problem in that mid to late game there for Hype Unit. They just didn't really seem like they had much of a response. Dzoni was just non-stop getting 1, 2, 3 kills set up almost immediately for his team. And despite oGryph's best efforts, because I really don't think we could have seen oGryph try and outplay Dzoni, Kespainify, and Fusify.
That 1v3 at the
better.
end? Yeah, no,
that was
about as
the
good as
best
you could ask, yeah.
possible case situation there for the Freya, and it still didn't pan out in his favor.
No, that things got a bit rough for them. I do agree after that attempted end on the game, and they couldn't quite get it. But it was multifaceted. I think that Chota, for what it's worth, did a great job, especially in the late game, being a big disrupting factor for them. Fusify was a nightmare on this Terra. I don't think that anything went wrong here, except that Hype Unit have to win that game sooner.
Flashpoint just understood what their strengths were and that it would be in the late game.
Well, we're going to get it back to the desk, though. Let them break down what happened in game number 1.
Great job there on the call. I think at the end of the day, Finch, you are absolutely right. Flashpoint come out on top here. And Anatoly, I think it had to do with that late game Kuang. I will say, I think Hype Unit understood their game as well. They understood that they had to win it earlier than that Kuang came online. They tried, but they failed.
A lot of Zhong transformations from that mid lane oBoronic, but it wasn't enough once the Kuang came online. That almost victory that Hype Unit was trying to go for ultimately cost them the game because they didn't go for Fire Giant. They didn't get the victory. They stalled the game for a little bit too long, allowing Kespainify to make the defense, revive a couple of other Flashpoint members, and just hold on for dear life while Dzoni was getting to his hyper carry form.
That's pretty much you know what we saw there. A lot of times we see the Kuang kind of take over the game and become this just hard hyper carry this entire time. But this time around, Flashpoint just had to wait till critical mass, so to speak. Shout out to Flashpoint or Hype Unit though. I think they handled the situations pretty well. I think my glaring disconnect is honestly the solo lane.
The great early game pressure for sure allowed them that momentum that they had, but yes, late game without beads against an Kuang is a risky thing to happen. 0-6-10 was Wolves on the not able to really get off to a good scoreline. And this is the defense that we were talking about where Kespainify was able to hold on to the Titan room. There was no minions for Hype Unit to tank this Titan, so having to juggle the aggro for long enough, and then they went for the Phoenix as it respawned. Kespainify gets a couple more kills, and this is where John just pops off.
Yeah, I mean, this is watching him weave in and out of the team fights using Blink blinking that water illusion is a really, really big deal. You know, a lot of people sit there and, you know, go, Kuang, not exactly the toughest character, and there are some ins and outs to it. And honestly, watching Dzoni is really fun. He goes in with all his cooldowns, he pops out, and he comes back in on the other side of the team fight. People are getting flanked 3 times in a single team fight, and I think that's really impressive to watch Dzoni kind of on the spot go ahead and do that. Hype Unit lose this first one, but I'll be honest with you, I am not sold for the rest of the set. This was a game that could have gone in either direction, Anatoly. And when it comes down to it, Hype Unit have definitely some good notes to move into game number 2.
I think their picks and bans were fine. I liked it. I liked where they put these gods as well. You know, Bobby playing the Sun Wukong. I think that his meditation was a smart pickup against the Kuang, helped him in the early and the mid game. There was that one time where he was a little late on the meditation at the 4-minute mark, but after that, very clean usage of the relics. I think that it was just about the itemization. No beads on Zhong was a big issue at the end of the day. Like, that is not a performance that we're used to seeing out of Wolves.
Exactly. We've seen a couple of shots of Wolves here in the player booth. Homie doesn't look happy, and the problem is that this is very similar to some of the other top teams that we've seen in the Pro League historically, is that Wolves is a guy that really doesn't, I mean, I also think that he underperformed there in my personal opinion. I just don't think we saw enough out of Wolves in general, the pick, the player, the position. So I think this game number 2, Wolves give him something he can really go hard in the paint with, an aggressive solo lane option, and beat up that solo lane Chota.
Well, he was trying to be aggressive with the Blink Relic second pickup, getting in the thick of things, made a lot of player damage and made a lot of noise with the Recall Demons. The issue was he went for the teleport at level 1, which a lot of solo laners do, but you have to be thinking about the late game. Like, if you're giving up Kuang, you got to know that you need that CC immunity against that, because every single time Dzoni was constantly looking for Wolves.
Right now, Dzoni, the savior for game number 1 in Flashpoint. Hype Unit looking for the same bans that we saw in the previous one. Thinking about if the Kuang is worth a ban, and no, says Hype. Flashpoint on the option now, no Merlin. We'll see where they go this time around, if they'll change things up. Do you expect a change from Hype Unit's approach?
I don't necessarily know if they're going to change their approach. Even though Arthur is available, where Flashpoint take away the Morrigan, I don't think Hype Unit will draft it right off the bat. They're more of like, save Wolf's pick towards the later stages. You don't really want to draft King Arthur too early, because there's only one role you can put it on.
Exactly, and Hype Unit now giving that some thought. Layers, of course, could take an Kuang for himself. That is available. Dzoni had it last time around. The Freya for Griff. And we saw what, oh man, I hate giving credit to what almost happened, but that 1 versus 4 really almost happened.
Yeah.
So
Griffin almost found a solo kill towards that mid-game against Kespainify, so
true.
that was another almost shoulda, coulda, woulda. And it seems like Flashpoint are making more adjustments than Hype Unit already.
It's interesting. You know, I said Wolves didn't do as much as I would have liked. However, the Morrigan banned out and Zhong picked up here. Flashpoint feel quite the opposite.
It was more of like oBoronic transforming
I
into the
agree.
Zhong in the mid lane. Sibi on the Medusa had a difficult time getting out of the danger zone. Every time he tried to disengage with a lacerate, the timing from oBoronic using that Zhong stun caught a mid-dash. There was nowhere for him to go. Didn't have Aegis early up until level 12, so all of that Zhong damage was just coming in full force.
oBoronic's got to be a big part of what allows Hype to find the victories. When it comes to land play, oBoronic generally looks strong. I've really enjoyed him over in the mid lane. So watching him here for Hype Unit, certainly something I got to be looking at. Freya, again, in the hands of Griff. Really unlikely to see that anywhere else. Hype Unit back on the clock here, looking to respond from Zhong and Jing. The Thor, relatively old school pick here for Hype Unit. And they've got one more selection before we go back over to the black and white.
So last time in game 1, this was the Erlang, Shen, and the Zhong. Not going to have that available in terms of the mage. Could have drafted the Doggo if they wanted to, but instead prioritizing some global pressure. And it surprises me personally that they drafted it this early, not after secondary ban phase, because no one is really picking Thor, so you don't have to reveal it this early. Now, if I'm Flashpoint, I'm picking super safe gods now that can deal with this global pressure.
My corruption.
Well, 2 hammers are better than none. Fafnir shows up for Hype Unit. He'll be the guardian of choice. Unlikely that we see that in any other spot either. So we usually applaud ambiguity in these drafts. Hype Unit has none of that. We know where Freya, Thor, and Fafnir are going. You could get cute with a Thor solo. That's absolutely something that you could do.
Are we going to see the trifecta hammer composition and see a Vulcan at a hype unit?
You know, we just might. At the end of the day, Oboronic has, I think, other gods available to him. But last time, hype unit banned out some of the healers available. And this time, Flashpoint are going to grab the Afro before the ban phase. So I think this is one of those things where Flashpoint are like, listen, they banned out both healers. Flashpoint doesn't necessarily specialize in the Aphrodite play, but if they're that afraid of it, we should bring it out.
Even though Flashpoint are changing their composition, by locking in this Aphrodite, this signals to me that their identity is still the same as Game 1, where it's focused on late game. The heals from Aphrodite, the damage from the Zhong is not super powerful early game. It could be exploited from hype unit, but Flashpoint were able to hold on in that first game, so they felt confident repeating the same late game, like another late game strategy in Game 2.
That's absolutely what I'm thinking. I'm thinking Flashpoint are looking towards Bakasura, the Kuang a second time, Kali, these absolute late game characters for Johnny. Those characters also pair up well with Aphrodite. Hype unit predictably bans out the Kuang. So that's why I think Aphrodite, you pair with a Baka, you pair with a Kali, and there just aren't enough bans for Hype unit to really go to that table.
And I'm actually surprised that Hype unit banned away the Kuang, because I don't think they were going to draft it now, because if an Kuang goes with the Zhong and the Aphrodite, that's too late game. Like, now you're really exposed in that early game where you're lacking a little bit of pushing power in the mid lane. You're going to be losing some of your speed buffs. I'm expecting more of an up-front jungler, such as like a Robin, a Susano, somebody that is going to be diving the backline and make a lot of plays.
I like the Susano shout. I still think Bakasura is in the minds of Flashpoint, but as they pick Terra, toss goes back over to Hype unit. They've got their dual lane and a jungle, looking for a mid and a solo unless Hype unit gets real crazy. And I don't think this is the arena to do it. I think Hype unit needs to play what they're good at. I want to see something that Wolves can be a bully on, and I want to see something that Oboronic can slap people in the face with. That's how this team wins, honestly. And so Hype unit here, thinking about the King Arthur, certainly a good thought. That's a bully.
Without any cripples that they have to worry about, King Arthur can just reign supreme. Very smart ban, by the way, from Flashpoint, taking away the Ode and targeting out Wolves. They certainly have done their homework, knowing that that's one of his go-to picks, especially with healer composition and a Zhong that can't get out of the cage.
Are you worried about the Hebo selection into Aphrodite Ultimate? Is that something you think about when selecting Hebo?
Not really, because if I am knocking up the Aphrodite, then I'm getting the ulti off on her regardless.
We'll see what happens there. Susano, though, the selection, and I think that makes sense. As we said, the late game carries banned out. Bakasura still available, but like you brought up, Zhong and Afro and Jingwei, relatively late game, so Susano a little bit earlier in that regard to balance out the equation. That is the team composition. Hype unit this time around, a great comp for those unfamiliar. Hebo in the mid lane for Oboronic is one of his staples picks. He's won world championships with this character. King Arthur, the bully in the hands of one of the most storied players in the console league. However, they are down a game, and this is match point. Totally, how you feeling about the draft?
Hype unit has a great draft in terms of getting kills. The question is, how are they going to control the objectives after the fact? They can't get too overzealous about trying to end the game the same way they did in game number 1. If that opportunity is presented to them, they have to be very calculating about whether or not the minions are there.
Flashpoint is certainly here. Hype unit trying to keep themselves alive. John Finch, take us away.
Be more than happy to, F. Thank you, Anatoly, as well, for the analysis on the desk. Finch and Taco, as we move into this all-important game number 2. Hype unit have got to find a way to hold on, because a loss like what they had in game 1, Taco, can absolutely linger and hover over you for the rest of this set. They have to try and regroup, and I think that's why they're on comfort picks. Hebo for Oboronic, Layers on Thor. I mean, KP, Layers of Death, whatever you want to call him, he's loved this Thor pick. They've gone back to what they know.
When your back's against the wall, you go with what's familiar to you, and for Hype unit, that does mean a little bit more traditional based on the side of comfort. I like seeing Layers on the Thor as well. I think that semi-global pressure is going to be really important in terms of maybe matching the mobility from Johnny on that Susano, but still a ton of setup as well from Flashpoint, and I do have a lot of concerns in regards to Flashpoint's team sustain also.
It's scary, isn't it? I mean, they've got the Aphrodite, the Terra as well. They all have plenty. and by means of keeping themselves healthy and topped up throughout these fights. And then even in some of these matchups too, I know you were saying you didn't love the King Arthur into the Zhong matchup as well, right? I mean, why don't you like that one for him?
Not a fan. The card is a fairly reliable way to clear out, but hold that thought though, Finch. Johnny in a little bit of trouble, and I've got all my eyes on solo lane so far. Chota and Fusify trying to invade against Wolves, and it looks as though it's going to be successful. In fact, it is successful. Chota's going to pick up the blue buff from Wolves now, but that speed still not having been collected by Johnny, going to be challenged by Inbound.
Inbound's coming over to try and harass. Remember, this is really about slowing and harassing the jungler more than actually taking the buff. We don't see this quite as much anymore. The supports kind of think about it, then they head over to the solo lane and just kind of do the 2v2 with them. But they've left Wolves to his own devices in the 2v1 in the solo lane here so far.
But look at Inbound, still sitting at level 1. Meanwhile, Johnny and Fusify kind of still in the same boat, but it's the fact that Johnny's jungle buffs haven't had their timers taken over by hype units, so a little bit of safety factors coming into play for those respawns. And getting back to that initial talk about the team sustain from Flashpoint early on, probably not going to be super impactful. But when this Aphrodite and the Terra start getting a little bit of their healing online, well, even oBoronic on that burst damage from the Hobwa might not be enough.
It's going to be difficult for this team. They have, though, I think, a lot more presence from their front line this game into King Arthur and then the Fafnir as well, especially when he's inside that Draconic Corruption. And I think that that's going to help out a lot. And you might not even see it in the slash lines. I think it's going to help oGryph a lot more. It really felt like he never had an opportunity to really gas pedal on Freya the way that you want to. And that's because I don't think his setup was there late the way that it normally is. So this could really be good for Hype Unit if they can stay competitive around these heals.
Freya can definitely require a lot of peel, especially when you factor in the caliber of opponent that you're up against and how they... Different teams are obviously going to handle Freya pressure differently, and for a team that's experienced a Flashpoint, usually a little bit easier to toggle. But one thing that I did want to bring up, Finch, was when you asked me about the Zhong versus the King Arthur matchup and why I don't really find that as being very fun for Wolves. I think fun's a good way to put it, because Wolves is someone, we're so accustomed to him just pushing his enemy relentlessly underneath their tower. And I think Chota might give Wolves a little bit of his own medicine this game.
That certainly could be the case. I mean, Wolves on the Zhong last game is going into a bit of a reversal of fortunes, but he struggled a little bit in lane. I think his team fight presence was certainly still there, but I mean, 0-5 at one point in that last game, certainly some struggles. So maybe he can look to try and return that favor on the Chota and get things looking a little bit better for him this time on that King Arthur pick. But we've talked about this already. This Aphrodite late game is obviously going to be very difficult for Hype Unit, even in ideal circumstances, to try and stop. Do they have to end this game by what, 25 minutes, something like that? Is it that desperate for them?
I won't say that it's necessarily Hype Unit playing against the clock, but I don't believe that would work against them.
Sure.
That's probably the best way that I could put it, because when you have a Hobwa on your team and Thor as well, I think that the Wombo combo for burst can definitely outpace that of the healing that Sibi would be able to provide on the Afro. Then again, though, with Undying Love being able to be channeled at any given moment, who's to say that won't just be oBoronic's crushing wave that gets factored out in every single team fight?
You're right, it's a huge safety factor for Sibi. Is going to be when he chooses to use that Undying Love cooldown, but I'm going to be watching Layers, especially once he hits level 5. Where will this Anvil of Dawn be coming out? Can he show why he loves this pick so much? He's oftentimes able to get off big double taps as well and poke his enemies down. That's less efficient up against these healers who can sustain through that poke oftentimes. I'm very interested to see how he's going to try and adapt his playstyle to fit this comp.
I would like to see an early Brawler's Rush for sure out of Layers in response to the Zhong, Afro, and Terra. I mean, you just can't even go wrong considering Kespainify is probably going to buy Devo gloves at some stage, if not second item, like he's building into right now, that Spike Gauntlet. But I like that Thor can easily proc Brawler's Beat Stick.
oBoronic yet again going with this Book of Thoth rush as well. We saw him do it last game on the Morrigan, and it worked out well for him. He was 3-0-5, I think, at one point along that curve before he finally started to slow down a little bit. Hobwa can similarly curve, so maybe we'll see that same thing happen for him if he goes into the cooldown boots as he did last game.
It does feel kind of awful though on the Habwa having to pick up a Divine Ruin, which I'm sure is going to have to be a necessity here for Hype Unit. In the last game even, I think that it was a little bit of an oversight from Hype Unit to not have factored in any sort of anti-heal for Dzoni on the AO. And now they have a shot at redemption here for Hype Unit. Not necessarily in regards to the anti-heal, but just trying to bring this set back in general.
That's right. It's only a best of 3 for console and minor league. That's what they're used to. But the SPL's been doing best of 5s all year, where they have a little bit more time to kind of play around in these sets and get used to one another. In these best of 3s, though, you have to be able to adapt quickly. And something like maybe making a risky in-call can haunt you as Chota is low on the right-hand side. Wolves takes him up to the air. But with this many members here, it's hard to see Chota making his way out. That's first blood for Hype Unit.
Almost squeaked by there, though, for a second. Wolves and Layers didn't really seem to be on the same page as far as damage output is concerned. Wolves taking Chota out of the Berserker's Barrage there from Layers. Could have been problematic had Fusify been a little bit closer. But fortunately for Hype Unit, Flashpoint, a little bit too late to the party.
That's good work. As tanky as Zhong can be, this early on in the game, he's certainly still a target. Layers and Wolves do a good job to punish him. Wolves even diving underneath the tier 1 and taking a little bit of extra damage for his trouble. But Hype Unit's got to do a lot more of that kind of stuff, I think, Taco, if they want to try and get this game moving in their direction the way they did in Game 1. In Game 1, Layers on the Erlang Shen was a monster in the early game. A lot of what they did well ran through him. It's hard to have that same level of impact on the Thor.
A lot of that also coming off the back of Layers having found an early double kill succession with that first blood bounty intact as well. I think it was a little bit easier, but on that thought, because oBoronic actually might have been in a little bit of trouble there, but Dzoni barely squeaking out of that stun from Layers there in mid. Seemed as though Flashpoint wanted a response into Hype Unit, just unable to connect.
That's crazy patience, though, from oBoronic, isn't it? Holds onto the beads and the ultimate in that situation, trusting that he'll be okay, and he absolutely was. Makes it back to the tier 1, and everything's A-okay. That means Flashpoint don't really get much from their aggression. And we talked at length about Johnny's Kuang and how, good he is on that pick. Probably just the best Kuang player in competitive Smite right now. But he's real good on a lot of other stuff, too. I mean, his Susano is certainly nothing to shake a stick at either. So this is still scary for Hype Unit.
It's not going to be a freebie, and that's for sure. I think the Flashpoint have already established that message. Even without their full roster, they are still not looking to let this set go away very easily towards the console guys. And Hype Unit, they've got their work cut out for them here in Game 2, Finch, because like we've already mentioned multiple times, Flashpoint got Game 1 victory, and it came with Dzoni on that AO. So you almost have to wonder how much of that could possibly be in the heads of Hype Unit as well, but maybe not so much if Wolves finds a solo kill onto Chota.
Good stun and an even better pull from Dzoni. That keeps Chota just barely alive. But Inbound transforming, they are considering fighting here in the 2v4. They've got them right at their tier 2 tower, so Flashpoint have a lot of safety. In fact, they go back in looking for a little bit more damage, but now oBoronic has shown up if they want to try and turn the tides. A 2-man knockup into 3 members hit by those water hands. In comes Layers as well to look for another kill. It's 1-for-1 so far. Layers makes away from that second tower shot, make that 3 as Wolves finds himself a double.
Wolves in Inbound now trying to see if they can bring down Chota at last. While that teleport looked like a saving grace initially, Flashpoint just all grouped up inside of that choke point for not just oBoronic's water spout, the crushing wave, and Layers dunking down in that Thor ult really just seemed to catch everybody from Flashpoint off guard.
But Taco, I mean, stop me if I'm wrong here, but that seems like way too much stubbornness from Flashpoint, really, in that situation. I mean, I don't know why you need to fight. You've made your team back to the tier 2 tower. You can just disengage. As if Hype Unit would keep 2 members there for that long with no one on the way. I mean, I don't know. It seemed like way too stubborn.
Flashpoint were expecting to get kills. That's really all it comes down to.
Sure.
They didn't expect the Thor to come crashing down on top of them.
But you have to, I feel like. I mean, sure.
You should, but it's not necessarily always true. I mean, you have to keep in mind, that's Flashpoint's T1 and T2 tower that Hype Unit are trying to aggress in between. It is a little bit bizarre.
oBoronic in some trouble, but the wall slam comes while he still has the beads immunity, so he makes his way out of there. But there's the hammer from Layers, chaotic purpose, whatever the name is. My man gets it done. Nice double tap, 5-1 now for Hype Unit. So the early game still looking good, but is this enough, Taco?
it's not enough of a lead just yet. Nothing that Hype Unit can feel all that comfortable with, because remember, Finch, game one looked very similar to this also. It was all Hype Unit dominating the earlier stages of the map during those laning phase portions. And one big help was the fact that Wolves got that gank so early on. Chota could actually be in some trouble here. Wolves aggressively diving this T1 tower, might not even need the help of Layers. Layers just gonna arrive for moral support and to clear the wave.
He's got to be careful though. He's used the hammer and Dzoni is on his way and he's in between the tier 1. So yeah, this went from just an unnecessary ult to actually Layers throwing his life away, not trusting perhaps Wolves to be able to clean that kill up or just wanting some extra help, and it ends up costing him.
Griff though seems to have finally baited Kespainify into his trap. Inbound, not even going to risk his hunter's life, just takes out Kespainify with the hammer toss from Fafnir instead. So, kills taking place, but on opposing sides of the map, so Hype Unit unable to really utilize much of that dual lane pressure, knowing that Layers just recently respawned.
I'm sorry, I'm still on Layers' death on the right-hand side, because I don't know if it
He
needs to happen.
really wanted to participate.
I mean, I think every part of it I'm on board with until he stays behind the tier 1 and then hammers. I mean, even against Susano, the hammer probably isn't enough to get you away. He's so good at closing distance, but I don't know, man. I feel like you just got to come back through the tower there.
I think that that's where communication becomes key there, and Wolves looked like he very convincingly had the pick onto Chota. I think that Layers diving in shortly after the fact was, I guess, a little bit of player safety, just to really make sure that his soul laner had it, but honestly, it felt like a lack of player discipline for
Maybe
that
so.
moment.
Yeah, I can't fault that part too much, but when it ends up getting punished like that, it's difficult. It's now Griffin inbound, catching the hands a little bit from Flashpoint in the duo lane. Griff will end up falling to Kespainify, who had the heroics in game number 1 to keep his team alive. Can he do it here again in game number 2? Inbound survives and Layers goes up. He wants a chance to try and flip the tables. This is what the Thor can do, but the hammer doesn't land. Fusify lives, and Layers has to leave.
Could be trouble now because Kespainify looking to close the gap with the airstrike,
Wow.
trying to dive onto Inbound, but the autos are going to get short. No, instead Kespainify just taking up the T1 tower and finds the persistent gust kill onto Layers, all while living with just a scratch of his HP.
And Dzoni goes behind the tier 1 tower and finds Inbound as well. Disaster now suddenly striking for Hype Unit as Kespainify has had himself a set. The defense on the Titan in game number 1 and the turnaround play with some help from Fusify here in game number 2. I mean, I've been loving it so far.
Gotta play to your strengths, and if there's one thing Kespainify is certainly taking advantage of, it is the mobility from this Jing way. Wolves, on the other hand, I think we've seen this one more than once before. Chota stuck to his T1 tower ever since that initial gank early on in the laning phase, just put him pretty far behind the King Arthur. But the question is, how much of an impact can Wolves translate this solo lane pressure into the rest of the team fighting?
It's a great point. I mean, he has a ton of sustain with the Glad Shield, at least for himself, to keep himself healthy, and can kind of sit in backlines on top of the likes of Aphrodite and Zhong and those sorts of things, and people who don't have great escape. So that can be strong, but Flashpoint have so much healing. Even with this early Brawlers, I don't know if Wolves in his lead is going to be enough.
Wolves is trying to do what he can to create as much of a gap as possible because he is going to be instrumental for continuing Hype Unit success here in the early game. But Chota, outnumbered and outdone here on this last tower. There's just nothing left for this Zhong to do. Hype Unit are going to take T1 in solo by force.
But this is old school Smite right here. When there's action in solo, you go do the Gold Fury. You don't spend your time slowly rotating when you won't make it. Just go grab the objective. And Hype Unit realized that they'd committed to right. They couldn't defend, so the Gold Fury goes down to Flashpoint. Though Griff has used the ultimate. I'm not sure if he was looking for the kill on Fusify or felt he was in trouble, but either way, he retreats and makes it out of there A-OK.
Griff is pretty open with dropping that Valkyrie's Discretion. That's one thing that I've certainly noticed throughout this set, and it could be problematic later on here. This doesn't bring Griff a very ideal boxing phase now up against Kespainify without the Valkyrie's Discretion. And not only that, but it also lets Dzoni know that he's got free reign right now on this Freya. She's not very mobile without that ultimate to kind of get her out.
Relying almost entirely on banish and just turnaround potential, just maybe just out DPSing you. is all oGryph can do when he does not have the ultimate. Toxic Blade, though, coming out from him. And this is so interesting because Freya really does just want the attack speed. You do want the anti-heal. Do you like this pickup for him? I think this works.
A little bit of everything. Almost,
too.
at least. Movement speed as well. Can't forget about that. But I think it was a bit of a necessity switch up for Gryph. All a little unconventional, but talking about unconventional, Layers going to come crashing down the mid lane. Unexpected.
Johnny's able to make it out of there with the Undying Love. I think the wall left a bit to be desired as well. The Layers has been able to reposition back underneath the tier 1 and Flashpoint, make it out of there. But still, if you're 16 minutes into this game with an Aphrodite mid, and this is how far behind you are, I think you're still feeling pretty good if you're Flashpoint.
That's the problem, though, Finch, is that for a healer composition, especially one reliant mostly around this Aphrodite, Flashpoint are nowhere near as far behind as they need to be, and Hype Unit know it, which is why they keep trying to continuously aggress into Flashpoint.
Wolves wants to get things started right into the back line to do the King Arthur things. They also drop Fusify's ultimate, and Wolves is having trouble keeping in the kitchen with all this heat. oBoronic gets a kill, but Wolves falls in trade to make it a 1-for-1. But in comes oBoronic for the double kill. Crushing Wave sets up for a triple kill, and Chota is in trouble. Quadra kill now for oBoronic. Flashpoint, get out of our house.
Who needs a Pyromancer when you can just take the Fire Giant instead after all? But no, oBoronic, he's not done just yet. He wanted the Penta, but Layers, of course, had to steal it away. Instead, Hype Unit, well, oBoronic, I should say, gonna have to be happy with this Fire Giant, but after getting a Quadra like that, Finch, that is the explosiveness that Hype Unit needed.
And that's the kind of plays oBoronic can make for this team. We've talked about just about everyone else on this squad and how strong they've been throughout the history of this team. Even back when they were Astral last year, largely this is still that same unit. But oBoronic is another one, man, that they've added onto this team, and he brings so much to the table as one of the top-tier mid laners. Him and Crimson go back and forth in that discussion, so no surprise he was able to show up for them here.
But that was purely the threat of Habois that we were kind of waiting to see whether or not it would happen.
Mid-game, baby.
Flashpoint just a little bit too, I don't want to say grouped up, but it was just a beautiful execution from Hype Unit, honestly. The way that they were able to disjoint Flashpoint and give oBoronic space, that's the beauty of having a true frontline. Wolves surviving for as long as he did, distracting Flashpoint, taking all of their cooldowns. It was just too much on the King Arthur.
Well, that's why they were grouped. They were initially grouped for the Pyromancer, right? But Wolves dives in and they try and turn around on him, and that starts that off as Layers has his ultimate forced. We'll have to worry about the fight that's happening right in front of us. Chota already down to half HP, but oBoronic yet again in position to try and have a nice team fight. Two-man stun from Layers turned things around, but Inbound looking more and more like a sacrificial lamb. I like the ultimate. That buys him some time, but he's definitely going to die. And Crushing Wave, not quite as good this time.
Crushing Wave just comes up a little bit short here. Chota's still going to wind up falling, but oGryph just doesn't have enough HP. He's going to wind up dying to the jet stream in a trade out up against Johnny. Wolf still alive, however, on this King Arthur, looking to finish the job, what his team started.
He saw Variety do this. It was in our highlight reel earlier, so why not get back in there? Layers here as well with a two-man stun. That sets up for the deicide. Hype Unit keep things even as LayersSlays finds himself a triple. That looked like disaster, but Wolves and Layers come back in and clean it up at the end.
Yeah, I just want to take a second here real quick and say cheers, Zapman.
Yeah?
He'll understand.
Okay, well, there you go. That's sent out there to Zapman. Tier 1 tower in left goes down. Now, Layers and Wolves don't have a ton of potential on their own to cause much damage on this map, but it's nice for them to at least win the fight, keep Sibi from farming a little while longer on this Aphrodite, and try and give their team a chance to group up and make some pushes, though. They don't have much potential to take down towers.
Unfortunate for Hype Unit that they come out on top, but not as a full squad. Still, the fact that they were able to salvage that engagement after how horrendously it started off for them.
It started real bad.
oBoronic's Crushing Wave just barely missing out on cleaning up Chota underneath that Oni Fury pit. It was just probably the most devastating part about that engagement, but absolutely perfect placement from Layers on that wall to buy his team just a little bit more time.
Yeah, two really good walls.
Save Gryph at least for a couple moments longer, but without that Fire Giant usage now, it's almost like Flashpoint are back on even footing.
That's what it feels like. Oni Fury, at the very least, will go down in favor of Hype Unit, though, because Kespainify was nearby. And we've seen him make some hero plays before. I don't know if we want to chase the Jing way, though, all the way back to the tier 2.
Oh, they chase him. And it looks like Hype Unit want more than just that Jing way after all. Flashpoint kind of hitting towards the fact that they want this fight as well. Grouping up right now, they're going to look to challenge Hype Unit.
Layers has his beads forced at the beginning of the fight, but keep an eye on oBoronic. He's the one at this point in the game that can deal the most damage, so Flashpoint want to keep him relegated away from the action. And for now, Hype Unit won't be able to find much more. Flashpoint regroup, get back to their tower, and everything's still okay for them, but Hype Unit want to try and force this under the tier 2. Layers is up and comes right back down to Kespainify.
But Choda's been separated from the rest of Flashpoint, gonna have to drop that Zhong ultimate in response. Still a beautiful shell from Hype Unit. It's gonna lead to oGryph being able to take down Choda in the end. And in a 4v5 situation, Hype Unit might just have the push power to siege this T2.
They just might, though 4 members is still plenty. Aphrodite can clear pretty well, even Kespainify from some range, so this won't be the easiest thing in the world for Hype Unit, but they're going to force it. They send oGryph back for this wave. It's an Oni wave, remember. They want to try and get this going.
Johnny going to get zoned away by Inbound for the time being. Wolves leading the charge underneath the T1 tower, but Johnny, having blinked forward, is going to draw oGryph's attention from the tower instead to that back line. Kespainify throwing out autos where he can, and it's just Flashpoint holding on.
Yeah, this is just too difficult, I think, to try and force down a tier 2 with their whole team here, with all this sustain from the Aphrodite. And Hype Unit eventually do give up the ghost there on that one and fall back.
Check out that right side T2 tower, though.
Not bad.
Cancel that. Kespainify already on the job. Spotted out that Oni Fury wave and immediately looks to save the life of his T2 tower. For good reason. If Flashpoint lose that T2, that makes it even more difficult for them to try and contest on the Fire Giant pit. And speaking of fire, it's back. And Flashpoint certainly not trying to let Hype Unit collect another one. But more importantly, this is where disaster first struck for Flashpoint in this set, or in this match.
You're not wrong at all. Right around this time on the clock. I want to do an anti-heal check, though, Taco. Pestilence there, Brawlers there, Divine Ruin, Toxic Blade. And really, Inbound, my man is not contributing at all. No Cursed Onk and no Pestilence or anything like that.
Clearly not a team player.
Yeah, that's what's looking like to me. But as much as I'm being glib there, do you think the no Cursed Onk is an oversight here or a mistake? Or maybe they're saying that it's all out of combat healing from the Aphrodite anyway and they can't stop that.
Hype Unit's game plan from the very start, I think, has been to try and keep the Brawler's Beat Stick procced.
That's going to have to work for them as Fire Giant now below half HP. They're forcing Flashpoint's hand, and so far they haven't made their way in. Kespainify zone, but Johnny sends the Typhoon over the wall. It's not enough. Hype Unit grab the FG, and they look for the fight on the back end of this as well. Kespainify forced to use Airstrike. Layers dunks back in with the Anvil of Dawn. He has to use his Aegis, though, to reposition as Fusify is isolated.
But Wolves, more importantly, is stuck underneath that
Big
T2
stun.
tower, manages to just barely squeak away. It's still Choda now going to reunite with Flashpoint.
Choda over the wall.
Blinks over the wall, but can't find Wolves.
He didn't know where he was. He can't get the card to land either, and Layers cuts him off with the wall perfectly. That allows him to live, and now Johnny is underneath the grill from oGryph, and he burns him down with Freya's damage as well. But in comes Choda with the Zhong recalling demons. He is able to find oGryph at the very least, but oBoronic gets a double, cleaning up Sibi. This fight's all over the place.
The Wolves, though, now looking to realign with the rest of his teammates. Choda's still hanging on, but Kespainify, he's already been here once before. The sole surviving member of the team fight.
You're
and the
so right.
entirety of Hype Unit. Well, excuse me, minus oGryph.
Minus oGryph, and that's a pretty critical person to be missing. I know he's not a traditional hunter, but Freya's damage on the tower certainly will be missed. But that is funny that, yet again, it could have potentially been Kespainify trying to keep the game going. But what a fight from Hype Unit. They still know that in this mid-game, we're not quite to the late game yet. They can still force some good fights before Flashpoint are truly ready. They force the fight around FG and keep them zoned out. But it's heartbreak that Choda has the right idea. He blinks over the wall looking for Wolves and just didn't quite know where he was. That hurts.
Past him.
That hurts, man.
I mean, he doesn't get the vision that we do, right?
Right, exactly.
It's funny for us.
Yes.
Because in all honesty, that's a very easy one to miss out on.
It's a great read, really. If he gets that, he's right. That turns the fight around. So it is a good read. It's just that he didn't have all the information. Yeah.
Hype Unit, and more importantly, Wolves, just having barely managed to create just enough space for Choda to have to turn and then recommit from a completely separate direction. It was still just a little bit too much separation for Flashpoint. But I love that ultimate usage from oBoronic. The crushing wave is what was really the unsung hero of that engagement there, because without oBoronic getting that type of damage down onto Sibi, who knows how that match might, or that fight might have actually ended up.
Got some guesses, as it could have certainly went Flashpoint's way. Kespainify won't be the hero this time. He's been removed early on. Layers now 9-2-8 on the Thor. oBoronic 8-2-9 on the Habois. Hype Unit, I was worried that they might have been out of sorts after that difficult loss in Game 2, but they've hung on, or Game 1 rather, but they've hung on here for Game number 2.
So Layers is actually kind of nasty
He
on
is.
the Thor.
Thor is one of his
It's like we've
staple
been
picks.
casting this man for 2-3 years now,
Yeah.
playing Thor. Holy man.
Yeah, if you all don't watch console and you're just now getting introduced to this Hype Unit team, there's some beasts on this squad, man, so do not underestimate them, as Fusify clearly the target. Layers comes in, but an Undying Love buys some time, and Fusify is still drawing breath on this earth. In fact, he's still alive even now, and Hype Unit pushed back out of Phoenix range. Flashpoint around this Aphrodite have held on, but Hype Unit can still reinitiate.
Chota unleashing the ghost, but Johnny's the only one still left with the Typhoon to try and keep Hype Unit at bay. Kespainify's passive actually going to play in quite nicely here. Get him close enough into that Phoenix range, and now Hype Unit, they're going to try one more time to look to re-seize this Phoenix.
Wolves blinks into the two-man stun. Follow-up comes through quickly from Layers, but not enough for the kill. oGryph finds Fusify, though, left to his own devices, but Wolves melts as well in the backline. Flashpoint hold yet again. This left side Phoenix, y'all, might just be cursed. Let's go somewhere else. I mean, I don't know, man. It ain't working.
Breaching the base has just not been working out super well for Hype Unit, and it's all coming down to oGryph on this Freya. Not to say that oGryph's the problem, but it's more so to say that Freya just doesn't have an ideal way of sieging these Phoenixes.
A reinitiation, though, from Hype Unit. They waited in the jungle, and they might have caught Flashpoint slipping. Inbound melts quickly, but so does Chota, the pressure from oBoronic. Though Johnny answers back quickly, and they turn that fight around. That's actually a huge fight for Flashpoint as they turn things around. oGryph can't duel out with Johnny, a double kill for the Susano, and Hype Unit. I mean, this is almost exactly like how it happened last time. It's different, players making the plays, but dying there right around red buff again.
This might just be a good example of Hype Unit getting ahead of themselves. It almost seems as though they're starting to imagine having already taken down the Titan before they even make it through the Phoenix yet. There's still 2 towers on the map that Flashpoint could have been looking for with the duration of their enhanced fire, or excuse me, their fire giant buff, but instead kind of dropped because they were so adamant about trying to take down that left side Phoenix since they had the pick for the power play. But is it truly a power play on Freya if there's still 4 members of Flashpoint standing? And more importantly, it was Sibi and Chota. They're the wave clears. They're the minion siegers. There's very unlikely that Hype Unit are going to take down a Phoenix without at least 2 or more picks.
And how much more time do you think Hype Unit has here, Taco? I mean, they still have about a 10k gold lead. They still have CB level 18, right? There's levels to be gained at this point. They're certainly still out in front, but it feels like time is starting to tick a little bit for them. Do they have like maybe a couple more fights, or how much more time does Hype Unit squad have?
The problem when you say out in front, Finch, is that it's a deceiving message in itself, because I don't really think that Hype Unit are all that out in front anymore. They're making some hype plays. They've had some really sick multi-kills, sure, but oBoronic now actually under a little bit of pressure as Fusify looking to push in, forcing out the Draconic Transformation from Inbound.
It's Flashpoint who are the aggressors now. Layers, though, goes up. He wants to reinitiate. 2-man stun in the back, finds Kespainify and Sibi, but Chota, the front line, starting to melt under the pressure from Hype Unit. That's 2 as oGryph gets Chota as well, and now they can kind of switch things out, send the healthier health bars up front to try and catch these last few staggering members. A stun from Inbound sets up oGryph, and in comes the hammer. Layers even blinks to it. He wants a little bit more. Kespainify, though, is able to retreat, but 3-for-0 for Hype Unit.
But still, Hype Unit so incredibly low as is that they're going to have to back first before taking a look towards this Fire Giant. Starting to wonder if it might be an enhanced Fire Giant as well, and with only 20 seconds left, yes, it does appear as though Hype Unit, if they're going to look for fire, they're going to have to deal with Kespainify and possibly even Fusify on the challenge, because an NSFG just is an entirely different type of beast.
It's so difficult to try and take it down. That's part of why it was pushed out to 30 minutes, so that it would maybe meet up a little bit better with the power spike from some of the players. Fire Giant now at half HP. Kespainify fully zoned for now, so is Fusify. but Inbound's given up on the zone. They've made their way back in. Fire Giant now under siege, but Hype Unit are able to grab it, and Layers yet again is going to be the one saying go. He's in the ultimate, but the rest of Hype Unit are backing up. They're just going to disengage. This is the patience I don't think they had in game 1, and maybe it will serve them better.
I'm surprised right now that Layers did not try to collapse on top of Kespainify, but I love to see that shift of attention here for Hype Unit, because it does show as though the players are adjusting. They're making those adjustments throughout the set that need to take place in these best of threes. And also, it's just the fact that Hype Unit finally remembered we don't always have to press go. You don't always have to do something immediately after taking a big game objective like the Fire Giant or like the Oni Fury. Sometimes it can be best to just have a natural reset.
And look at how Sibi's built. He's got the Mantle of Discord as his 4th item right now, clearly filling the pressure. 6 deaths that he's taken to this point as well. I mean, Mantle of Discord is a one-off defensive item, is excellent, right? It's 60 all prots, and the passive that it has when you get down below the health threshold is really strong as well. So it's huge, but it clearly shows how much pressure he's felt he's been under this game.
Solely utility right now for Sibi on this Aphrodite, so he needs that Mantle of Discord because he knows that he is the prime target. I mean, just look at what Hype Unit have built throughout this entire match. On every single one of their members, there's some form of anti. Well, we don't talk about Bobby. He's not a team player. We've already established that since earlier on.
Bobby, clearly insanely strong, but we like to give him a hard time.
In all fairness,
maybe it's the blue hair. Do you think that's seeping in?
It's making him a bad boy, clearly.
He's off the rails now,
the
right?
The shell, though, for realsies, the shell is huge here for Hype Unit, because without it, I think that Dzoni would be a lot more threatening on the Susano, but that shell has come in clutch on more than one occasion to save the lives of oGryph and oBoronic alike.
The upgrade, the block stacks, right? Yeah.
So, with Hype Unit, making sure to be efficient and thorough, taking down those last 2 standing T2 towers, about 3,000 gold to the pockets now, and gold maybe a little bit more irrelevant since the game is 32.5 minutes deep, but it's still nice to just have that little bit of a boost, maybe upgrade some of these relics. Some of these beads and Aegis timers are sitting kind of long still until they're upgraded.
Speed Elixir still out there as well, which can be nice power spikes in the late game. And I mean, to be honest, Sibi only has 4 items fully built. He still has the Blessing, and he's only on tier 1 of the pin option he's working on as well. So Sibi still a good way away from being done. Fusify as well. Even Chota still working on 6 items. So I think there's still a little bit of relevance to this gold lead for Hype Unit, but it's certainly dwindling. I don't know if it's enough to win you fights outright at this point in the game, right? So they've got to make sure they capitalize on these next 1 or 2 engagements, or else Flashpoint truly are just back on even footing.
It's definitely hurt Sibi, though, not having Pen online just yet, because that Afro back-off is a huge standing point for her in that mid lane position. You want a little bit of power and Pen on this Aphrodite, so it is a true wombo combo.
Well, Layers is up in the air. That means Hype Unit absolutely wants to start a fight and Kespainify the early target. Undying Love forced at the very beginning of the fight. Wolves way in the back line brings Kespainify low, but he's going to need some backup as the Phoenix has started to hit home. oBoronic gets the first, Layers finds the second. Dzoni and Chota already removed from the engagement. Fusify's been banished, and oBoronic deletes him as well. A double kill in this fight. That's a deicide. And Taco, Hype Unit, they're not ready to go home just yet.
Xbox strikes back. And for the first time, I believe, in our SMITE history, we've got a console team beating a PC one.
Well, we haven't had crossplay, right? So a good point there, Taco. That's a great point.
Let them have this.
But swinging in for console here is Hype Unit, and this was the set more than any other that we thought had the potential to be this close. 1-1 between them is no surprise, and honestly, Hype Unit had to be feeling like they could have won game 1 if they played a little bit cleaner. They've got every right to claim this set.
It was just nonstop pressure. I mean, games 1 and 2 have been relatively similar from Hype Unit. They have looked for that early game and the mid game and purely trying to siege control of it.
And they've been able to do it very well so far. In both games, though, I've been impressed with the way that Layers has played. He had me worried a little bit with the Thor in the early game, but he absolutely started showing up. And what about my man oBoronic on that Hobwa? That was absolutely nutty as well. But Taco, I'm sure we could sing the Hype Unit's praises all day long. Let's get this back over to the desk. They'll break it down.
Very excited about this win here for Hype Unit, and I'll tell you exactly why, because this is their style. Totally coming into this tournament, I was kind of worried about the crossplay teams, both minor league and console competitive. Looking at, are they going to change their game too much? Are they going to try to adapt too much? Hype Unit played old school picks, how they've won in their own regular season, and they take the game.
They were still aggressive compared to game number 1, and this time they sealed the deal. They were more calculating about how they were going to close out some of these objectives. The patience to do that 30-minute fire giant and then disengage.
Yeah.
You could see Layers went up in the air. He wanted to try to get a little bit of extra, but he realized, all right, we need to close this out cleanly, because you got to worry about the late game threats from Flashpoint, playing the Zhong, playing the Aphrodite. Those are two gods you got to worry about.
And this is one guy you got to worry about as well. I sat here, on the desk just a second ago, and I said, if Hype Unit look to win this game, it's got to be off of some old school oBoronic nonsense. This was one of many multi-kills. Quadra kill. I think he had 2 separate triple kills as well. This was absurd. And I mean, I'm going to take this back. This was insane, but absurd is unfair, because this is what oBoronic does. oBoronic and Layers together really made this one happen for me, Totally.
They both really popped off this game. You got to respect the global pressure from this Thor, but not only that, just the close range action between him and the Habwa. It was difficult for, I think, Chota to do anything as a Zhong. When he made this rotation, he really tried to play cleanup crew, but it was a little bit too late. All the late game Habwa damage was too much to handle.
That's what these guys do. oBoronic and Layers have combined together in that mid and jungle. You talked about how important mid-jungle synergy is. These guys have been doing it for years. And, not to take anything away from the rest of the squad, this was a team win, but oBoronic has a history of doing this both in the regular season and particularly on land. And it's interesting because I don't think this guy started that way. But for the past couple of years, all you can do is, when the going gets tough and the back against the wall, give oBoronic a Hebo. Give oBoronic, sometimes we see it out of some of the other picks as well. But for me, it's always been the Habwa. Give it to him and see what happens. Hype Unit on match point, tied 1-1. I don't think you can ask for anything better than that.
And it wasn't just oBoronic on the Habwa or just Layers on the Thor. You got to give a lot of credit to the rest of the supporting crew. The calls that were made, the grouping up. I think Arthur for Wolves was a good pick to be able to bully out Chota on the Zhong, not allowing him to get to that late game form. And also the ability to make this aggressive comp work again and not allow Flashpoint to get to that late game. They didn't have to worry about Kuang, sure, but I still think there was a ticking time bomb that they prevented by winning at the timing that they did.
Absolutely. And, watching teams kind of counteract their mistake in game number 1, it was a mistake. Hype Unit probably should have taken that game, but, they didn't know how to tank the Titan. They weren't able to go ahead and figure out that win. So the secondary game, what they do in game number 2 is they peel it back. They identify what went wrong. We saw a moment where I kind of held my breath and I went, okay, Hype Unit could look to end right now if they want, and it would be the wrong choice. Game number 1, Hype Unit goes for that. Game number 2, Hype Unit, they peel back. They look for a fire giant. They disengage after the fact, like you noted. There was a lot more kind of hurry up and wait. There was a more meticulous pacing here for Hype Unit this time around.
Felt like that they had some war flashbacks, not trying to go for the end that time around. And you got to give a lot of respect to that kind of ability to change on the fly like that. I think Flashpoint's changes in game number 2 was a little bit too drastic in the sense that they went for the Aphrodite and the Zhong, like too much late game focus. This time around, Johnny didn't really pop off the way we were expecting him to.
Also that, Johnny, we noted that he is not the only member on this team, but certainly the one of note.
Yes.
When you look at game number 1, Johnny's Kuang kind of brought that game together. And so when you look at game number 2, Johnny being kind of absent, that's certainly a big deal. During the regular season, when Johnny's absent, most often, Farrakrick is the one that comes and fills that spot.
That's fair.
With him down here, it's a little bit rough for the Flashpoint squad. They, however, will have the first selection this time around. So what are you expecting to change here, Tully?
I'm not expecting an Aphrodite pick on Flashpoint this time around. There was just too much AoE burst damage that Flashpoint couldn't prevent. You could only ulti 2 people at a time between oBoronic and Layers. It was a lot of damage too quickly. I think Flashpoint should just play aggressive early. Like, play Hype Unit's game of early, because that's how Flashpoint were getting a lot of their victories in the SML of Europe, was the ability of Johnny to really pop off.
Always late. We'll see if it's too late for the team to take the victory. The Morrigan still banned out. No surprise there. I think that oBoronic is just that scary. He beat you kind of in game number 2. The Morrigan in game number 1 was very, very powerful. Didn't bring the win like we saw, but certainly a nice look. So oBoronic not going to have access to that one either. Hype Unit banning the Freya, knowing that they were the first pick in the last couple of games. That allowed oGryph to play it, but with the Valkyrie taken away, Hype Unit now discussing their second look, and it will be the Mage ADC of Kronos.
And now leaving a Muzen available. I think Flashpoint will insta-lock this, trying to get pressure in the mid lane for Sibi. He played the Medusa in game number 1, which is kind of like the next go-to pick once a Muzen is down in the mid lane. So I'm expecting more mid control from Flashpoint this game.
Sibi, to call any of these guys veterans was an accurate statement, but the LAN veteran here for Flashpoint, Sibi's been here, I think, 3 separate times. Unfortunately for him, his team has always had a pockmark on it, whether it's 1 player, 2 players not able to make it. I think that said, having Johnny is best case scenario. It's unfortunate that Farrakrick has to stay at home, but a big deal here for Sibi as he again tries to make his mark at LAN play. Hype Unit now, the console squad, trying to figure out what it will take to take this best of 3 to the bank. Right now, it'll be the Thor. I loved the initiation factor. There's some question marks, but at the end of the day, every time Thor came down, it was impactful.
Yes.
I'll take it.
Also the walls. The impact of just cutting people's escape, being able to multi-stun, that great 2-man stun behind the Gold Fury, being able to last hit 2 of them with just basic attacks was a sight to see.
And then there was the 2-man stun on the right side by the solo tier 1 tower where he gets the double tap as well, opening up a whole nother set of options. So Thor looked good. The Jormungandr and the Fafnir, though, selected here for Flashpoint. The Eastern Europeans really liked Jormungandr there on the short side. He looked good in the hands of Chota before in game number 1. We'll see if he can do it again here. And the Fafnir, low amount of surprise here. You see AMC likely to go into the mid lane like we've been discussing for Sibi. Double Hunter, Fafnir, grass is green, water is wet.
Sure, and you don't necessarily have to run Double Hunter. Like, this could be going to Kespainify for the Muzen, but it's probably going to be a Double Hunter composition with how popular AMC is in the mid lane. And where I was getting to is the fact that just with a Muzen and a Fafnir, that's already really fast objective control. You add another Hunter to that, and then I think Hype Unit needs to be really on top of when Flashpoint are going to start those objectives.
I love this Osiris selection. We were looking at the King Arthur before. Now we see the Osiris. And in all honesty, if you remember the beginning of game number 2, Zhong was kind of giving it to the solo laner. It really wasn't a stance that Hype Unit could kind of stand on. Osiris is a fighter. This is the character, this type of character is what I want to see in the hands of Wolves. Be that bully. It took a while for Arthur to be able to do that. The oGryph can come out and just fight you.
He's the anti-hunter of choice. Like, outside of Bologna with a Scourge, I think Osiris is like your next best anti-hunter, knowing that he's going to mitigate your damage with a Judgment Tether, especially when you're playing a hunter that has no escapes like a Muzen.
Yeah.
You can't escape those tethers, right? Like, you can try to outrun it potentially, but yeah, then you get slowed by the Osiris.
By his 1 and his 3,
yeah. The
and
sickle.
his 2 and his 4. His
All
4
the things. The
roots you in place.
He'll lock you down forever, it feels like.
You think he's going to buy a Frostbound Hammer?
Oh my god, no, stop. He's not Bologna.
Winged Blade for Flashpoint, please. Hype Unit on the clock. They have banned out 2 of the late game hyper carries, out Kuang, Kali. Very rare do we speak in absolutes. I'm not a Sith. That said, I think those are the correct bans, as close to correct as you can come. Bakasaurus still lurks in my mind, and the Susano obviously is what FP went to the last time around, but a very different situation with the Muzen in the mid lane.
Basic attackers will synergize very well for Flashpoint on the jungle side, on also Kespainify. So I'm expecting Bakasaurus as well, whereas last game I definitely expected more CC in the form of the Susano. This wouldn't really surprise me if this does get locked in.
This is, I think Kabrakan is one of the forgotten gods. Every now and then people ask me, what characters do you think we should see more of in the Pro League or whatnot? And it's usually Kabrakan. He does a lot of work against the Muzen Cobb and is real powerful here, especially wanting to play aggressively. But I think the reason we see Hype go from Kabrakan back to the Geb is these last two spots are more question marks, and you could just walk yourself into a bad matchup.
And not only that, you just need peels. Like, you're going to have Thor and Osiris diving the enemy backline. Who is going to be protecting oBoronic and also Griffin? Gab makes a lot of sense. You might want Gab, you might want the Khepri, but knowing Inbound, he's more comfortable on the Geb.
That's a big question. You bring up oBoronic's name. That's the man that really put in a lot of work to win game number 2.
That would be spicy.
The set. Will we see it? Locked in here for Flashpoint. Johnny on the spot, gonna bring out the new guy. Set will be selected here, and Hachiman will be the hunter of choice. Likely to see him in the long lane. Muzen Cup in the mid. Hype Unit now have their mid lane selection on deck. Where do they go?
They need some anti-basic attackers. Anything that attacks speed slows.
So Xing Shen mid.
I mean, it doesn't reduce the attack speed, but it does mitigate the damage being dealt.
Totally. I don't think they're going Xing Shen mid.
I mean, I could see it.
I appreciate you
I
sending
could see it.
This isn't an Alpha Jackal team, okay? This isn't an Alpha Jackal team. Hype Unit,
Mana?
they need a magical. They've got 3 physical.
Yeah, they only have Gab, you're right.
So they do need a magical unit here. Shout out to the Vamana choice. And Zeus is where I thought we were going to go. We had the Waterman last time. Now we bring the Rainstorm. Hype Unit enabling their mid lane carry with one of the hardest carrying gods in the game right now. What are your expectations for Set? What are you thinking for Zeus? The floor is yours, Totally. Talk to me.
Set is going to try to engage on the Zeus, but you're going to have to only do it with your Blink because you're going to need to use that clone escape to disengage once Zeus drops the Lightning Storm, drops the Chain Lightning. It's going to be difficult to even kill the Zeus because now you have to go through the Geb shield on top of it. Inbound went Meditation in game number 1. Wouldn't be surprised to see him go for more defensive relics in game number 3. I don't think it'll be too easy for Johnny to find the picks.
It'll be tough. I think this, Johnny playing the Set, he's going to be definitely a high-caliber player, high-caliber character. Certainly a lot going on there. But on the other side, I mean, Hype Unit, they've got the Thor that was so successful in game number 1, and then the Zeus. oBoronic has a resume this long about games that he's won with Zeus. I'll be honest, Totally, after game number 2, I think Hype Unit might be able to take this.
I think so in the PvP, but keep in mind, there's a PvE strat.
One game to call it all. Flashpoint, Hype Unit, Finch, bring me the mini.
I'd be more than happy to. Let's move into this hype game number 3 between these two teams, and Hype Unit truly with a chance to upseed an SML squad here. I think on paper, Tonko, Flashpoint's draft probably a little bit better, but Hype Unit have picked picks that just work for them. Wolves is on the Bully in lane on Osiris. Layers is on the Thor that he just popped off with in game number 2. oBoronic on Zeus, and oGryph has taken the Jing away from Kespainify. I mean, this is a Hype Unit draft.
This is a Hype Unit draft for sure, but Set is, without a doubt, the biggest question mark from both of these teams. And I had it not been Set, I do feel as though maybe we would have seen another god with like some mobility, but I like the idea of Set against the Thor. Not necessarily even for the Zeus, but it's all the mobility around the clones and whatnot, and just having that extended range poke could help out for Johnny in terms of trying to deal with Layers.
It's very interesting. I mean, we don't get to see as much Set. We've seen him brought out a couple times. I don't think he's particularly been successful yet, but he's absolutely a Johnny pick to me. I think of him very similarly in the same vein as Kali, in that he likes to just get back there and sit on top of a target in the backline and blow them up with those basic attacks at close range, and he has the mobility to do that with those clones, with the blink. He picks that up. It just got to come down to Johnny's execution, but I mean, I trust someone like Johnny to be able to play it well.
And something else that we never really addressed was Chota being back on the Jormungandr. I think he's also another really crucial play for Flashpoint here, because Flashpoint has even admitted it themselves. This is what he is most comfortable with.
Yes, exactly. And I imagine that Chota doesn't have quite as deep a god pool as Sibi would in that role, and if Fair Creek were there to play mid for them, obviously, but he has stepped up for them. I don't think Chota has really hurt this team so much, as a sub for them. I think he's given them every opportunity to be in this set so far. So again, I kind of just want to, give him as much praise as I can for stepping into a tough situation and looking good.
Never easy trying to fill in some pretty big shoes, honestly.
Yeah.
Sibi is a phenomenal solo laner and has done a fantastic job in his time in the minor league, and the fact that he's now flexing into an entirely different role that I doubt he's had a very much practice on prior or leading up to this LAN, since for the longest time, Flashpoint were under the assumption that Farkirk would be here.
And remember, he's stepping into a spot where it's almost lose-lose for him. They're heavily expected to win against console, right? A team as strong and veteran as Flashpoint. So if they win, it's like, well, yeah, you were supposed to anyway. And then if they lose, you feel like it all falls to him. I mean, he came into a tough spot, and I've been really impressed with how he's done.
To be fair, though, if anybody thinks that Hype Unit is a blowover team after how games 1 and 2 have been, I doubt that should be the assumption from the public any longer. If anything, I mean, fair play for both sides.
I think so too, man. We both said coming in we thought this was going to be one of our better sets, and I think we've been proven right so far as Inbound brought quite low here in the solo lane. He came right over to the solo this time. Remember last game, he kind of hovered in the jungle a lot more, tried to harass, but Layers on his way. Fusify might potentially be in some trouble. I think they know that he's here, though. It's being pinged out. Underhand tactics lets him get away, and yeah, Layers doesn't have much potential to kill.
Layers just instead going to turn his attention towards that Totem of Ku, but not before Chota tries to take it down, but Oboronic does get spotted out, was all by his lonesome on that red buff because Layers committed towards the solo lane rotation, will find a kill in response onto Chota. The damage has already been done. Oboronic taking that early first blood spill to Dzoni nonetheless.
That is definitely rough. To not only drop for first blood, but to give the kill over to the set and accelerate his farm is scary. But I have to imagine that was within calculation. If Layers is not with a Zeus in the early game against a set, I think that this is a reasonable expectation that he could end up being punished. So I'm trusting Hype Unit to have said they're perhaps okay with him taking a spill, though I doubt they wanted it to be first blood.
But that might be part of the problem in my mind, Finch, because Flashpoint we're probably anticipating for Inbound to start on solo. Hype Unit has done it all 3 games so far of having their support over there in the solo side of the map early on. And since Flashpoint know that Oboronic's been left to his own devices for a large portion of the early laning phases, I think that all Flashpoint really after just trying to punish Oboronic as often as possible. Maybe even Inbound, trying to catch out this Geb early on before his shields really become as impactful defensively.
A great ward from Gryph, I do want to point out, that let him know that Dzoni was on his way, and he started to retreat. So the information likely garnered by Flashpoint that there is a ward there, but the better win goes the way of Gryph as he manages to avoid ever even having to see the gank from Dzoni here in dual lane, as we're seeing things swapped around a bit. Freya banned out this game. Gryph has played it all set long. Now he's switching over to the Jing Wei, taking it from Kespainify and pushing him down to the Hachiman. But wait, hold up. Layers has gone up into the air. He's looking for Fusify.
Not going to find a target, however. Instead loses his beads in response here. Meanwhile, Kespainify, steady pressure up against Gryph in this dual lane. Hachiman's not Freya. He's got that Heavenly Banner for that extended range poke, and even though Gryph has had a relatively easy time so far dealing with Kespainify on the Jing Wei, taking the Jing Wei himself could be problematic here.
You all are seeing the Wolves effect right now, by the way. It might not net him a kill, but this is the kind of thing Wolves has been doing to people on console for as long as he's been playing. And Chota catching a little bit of that action here now. Part of its matchup, of course, Osiris considered just one of the best solo laners, bar none right now, into the Jormungandr. He likely wins it, but that's the kind of thing Wolves brings.
Chota really does not want to let this wave go. Even still trying to contest that Totem of Ku, now that he's got his jungler, Dzoni, rotating in to help him out. Without that Lord of the Afterlife, Dzoni knows Wolves doesn't have as much kill potential, but not looking to take any chances either. Backs off, while Chota loses a huge chunk of what he just freshly regen to a nice hammer toss from Layers. This could also end up being the blue buff.
It certainly could. I think Chota was trying to buy time until his teleport could come back up, but instead he'll have to walk back to lane the old-fashioned way. Fusify does his best trying to defend the blue buff, but to no avail. Up against 3, that was never really going to happen anyway.
Still fun to think about. You never know. I mean, we've seen crazier steals from supports in the past, so.
It was a non-0% chance, yeah.
It was up there.
But still low.
Somewhere between 0 and 1.
Yes, that is where I would put it. More than 0, but not
no
more
faith
than
in
1.
Fusify on that Fafnir.
It's not his fault. He's a Fafnir. Come on, then.
That's the thought that counts.
I
He
guess
tried to defend that blue buff.
I like the idea, but all of that, the genesis of it is Wolves' pressure here in the solo lane on this Osiris so far against Chota, which is to be expected. And so far has done a great job with it. Layers actually paid a good deal of attention to this side of the map, the solo side. We haven't really seen him look for Kespainify at all. I wonder if it's that they want to try and punish Chota or the Yorm, or maybe he gives a lot of respect to this Hachiman and its safety factor.
Well, right now, I think Johnny's just focused around Hype Unit's red buff and trying to ensure that that timer stays locked down to Flashpoint. oGryph going to utilize his agility to get back to the wave a little bit faster. Kespainify off the mark with that Heavenly Banner poke attempt. But more importantly, Finch, Flashpoint have definitely made it clear now with that secondary successful invade from Johnny that they want this red buff.
Yeah.
And it's drawing the attention of Hype Unit more and more. They're inching closer every single rotation. And I think on the next one, we could probably expect an engagement to break out.
Inbound has slowed Fusify. They drop down the stun, and with Layers dunking in as well, that's about as clean a kill as you'll ever see. 3 ults, perhaps excessive, but either way, they take down Fusify's life.
I'm psychic.
Yeah, go for it.
No, not this time around. If anything, what I say will be the exact opposite that happens knowing the caster's curse.
Oh yeah, it's a
That
powerful
was a
force.
one-time in my favor.
Johnny, though, wants oBoronic, who does not have the Lightning Storm available, gets the Geb Shield. That buys him time for Johnny to be traded out evenly. Good work there by Inbound and Layers to turn that one around and make it 1-for-1.
Johnny just had to full commit there, though. Couldn't afford to let oBoronic survive, especially since it was such a steep investment there from both Johnny and Sibi. But Layers will get spotted out on his attempt to re-steal Chota's blue buff. Wolfzone not quite ready to give it up just yet. Instead, could be looking to even just kill Fusify.
He absolutely could. Lord of the Afterlife gets him away from the stun, but Fusify responds to get away from the root by going into Draconic Corruption. And it works for him to at least get out, but that means Wolves has forced a pretty key cooldown away from Flashpoint, just again off his solo pressure.
That last kill, though, for Johnny and Sibi, I kind of want to break it down a little bit further from what took place there in mid.
Yes, please.
Oh, hold that thought, though, because Kespainify actually on the run for his life right now. oGryph has been bringing it to Kespainify all 3 games so far in this laning phase.
He has been, as Chota is in a lot of trouble. Yet again has the ultimate that allows him to disengage. These first 2 could be for damage, and the third will be for the retreat. That's what we often see from the Jormungandr, and no changes here from Chota as he once again feels the pressure. But look at Hype Unit, they're aggressing around these mid camps now. Johnny's right there nearby, but doesn't want to look for the fight.
Johnny can't go in by himself. It's tough for this set, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about even, but we'll get to that after the fact, because right now Inbound trying to stay alive for his life here. Johnny looking to collapse on the backside, but a Geb Shield's going to buy him just a little bit of time. Not enough, though, and oBoronic actually could be in a spot of trouble here, but with Layers to back him up, gonna be no trouble whatsoever for the Thor to take down that set.
No agility, or that could have been another kill. Doesn't matter. Wolves rotate over 3 for 1 in favor of Hype Unit, and they only have to give up Inbound, who I'm sure they were happy to give away anyway. Another great fight for Hype Unit around that middle lane as they finally were able to pull the experience a bit in their favor, though gold still very even. This whole match still very, very close so far. And really, the whole set's been even, and not set for Johnny, I mean the set overall.
oGryph, though, dashes forward aggressively into Kespainify, but on top of that Heavenly Banner, this is not a trade that's going in oGryph's favor. Luckily, he's got Inbound to back him up here with the Geb Shield, and the fight will dissipate for the moment. But that's only in duo lane. That's not about the solo.
Chota does not have the ultimate this time, and Wolves recognizes it, but can't afford to keep up the dive underneath the tier 1. Layers, though, can't find the dunk, is still able to get Berserker Barrage off and teleport to Hammer to get away from Johnny. Another big play from Hype Unit as they find the Jormungandr in solo.
Johnny tried to do what he could, but it was just a little bit too late to try and save the life of Chota. And this is also part of the problem with Set. He's got great pick potential, but in competitive play, it can be really difficult, I feel, to try and find an opportunity here. Johnny, though, still managing to make one happen anyway, as he picks off Wolves.
Turnaround potential from Johnny, the double kill! Oh man, Layers had no way he was gonna win that one, and Johnny blows him up. Yeah, Set's here.
I don't even think Layers was expecting that damage, or understanding what even did that much damage to him just then. The clones
Yes.
that Johnny has just been setting up around these corners, try and pincer the members of Hype Unit with. I think that was the first time that we saw the effectiveness of Set when he is able to find those pick opportunities.
Yeah, like a laundry basket full of unwashed clothes. That play was filthy. Johnny puts in the hurt on the right-hand side. I'm loving it. And really, he can do that in just about anything that he plays. That's why we say as strong as Wukong is, it's not just that. I mean, clearly, the Susano, the Set, he has it all in his repertoire.
It's just right as things are starting to look strong for Hype Unit. Well, cancel that because they're still looking fantastic. oBoronic and Inbound going to join forces to just evaporate Sibi.
This is not what you pick the Muzen Cobb for in the middle lane. We haven't gotten to talk much about Sibi on this AMC, but he often equals free pressure in the mid lane. He's so strong right now, but that's 2 deaths he's had that Hype Unit be able to force. Both of these immobile mid laners have struggled so far.
Gold Fury being pulled by Hype Unit, but that's just the start. Fusify is not healthy enough to really stick around, and he's only level 7.
Hi, I'm an Osiris. Kespainify. Welcome to the Church of Osiris as Layers gets Fusify way in the back line, and now the rest of Hype Unit can go right back to the Gold Fury. Horse is forced out, whether they're in the back or no, but Johnny wants to come in and try and stop this. Almost finds a kill, but Inbound claims his life. But he might have done enough. Hype Unit are too low to feel comfortable pulling the Gold Fury.
Hype Unit, though, are still sticking around just to make sure that it's not Flashpoint hovering for some more picks. And yes, a trade out of Johnny's life for the objective stop. Not exactly ideal, but definitely worthwhile.
I think so too. I think Flashpoint can feel pretty good about that engagement. Obviously, you'd prefer to win those fights. That's the best case scenario, but stopping a Hype Unit who's kind of on a roll like that from grabbing the Gold Fury and snowballing out even further is pretty good. But Layers, he wants to find a little bit more. Does Wolves know? As he dunks in on top of Chota, there's the Lord of the Afterlife. Of course, Wolves knows, and Chota had nowhere to go.
No part of the map is safe, and especially not for Chota. You're not fooling anybody trying to back behind those trees. You're taller than them, Chota.
You're trying to be sneaky. I love it, right? Maybe I can just tuck back behind the tree. No way. Wolves and Layers, their synergy just as strong as it's ever been. And Chota ends up falling, though. If you're Flashpoint and you've been doubled up in kills to this point, you can feel pretty good because you're only down 1,700 gold. This is not out of reach.
I think you felt a lot better, though, before seeing Johnny still maintain an experience lead gap over Layers.
That's
Hype
right.
Unit has been fighting so much that they haven't really been prioritizing the lane farm or even a lot of the map farm. And while it's not extremely problematic just yet, I mean, obviously we've got a massive experience gap between Fusify and Inbound.
That's the real trouble.
Because of how much fighting has been taking place. It's just a concern in the back of my mind for Hype Unit that they don't get too caught up in the aggression.
Well, a Geb that's really far ahead, though, I mean, that's huge. It's hard to sort of oversell how important that is because Geb late game is one of the best Guardians you can have. And getting you to that point closer with him on par almost with the mid laners, I mean, that's more than you can ask for. He's got his second relic already. The Frenzy is online. Very reminiscent of what we see up at the SPL level with the likes of Rival and Splice.
Couldn't get much better either when you have a Zeus that you're boosting up.
Yeah.
Probably 90% of the time or looking to protect. Inbound needs to be oBoronic's personal babysitter throughout this match, though, because the more miserable that Johnny is while trying to kill this Zeus, the better off Hype Unit's going to be in the long run. Player frustration is a real thing, and when you're constantly getting torn apart and punished for trying to go in on a Zeus because of Geb Shield and Cataclysm, you do start to lose your mind a little bit.
It can absolutely be frustrating, or a source of frustration for someone like Johnny on these dive-heavy assassins that he likes to play, and that's what Set needs to be able to do. I mean, remember that fight we saw in mid lane where he had to dive a little bit too far to get the kill on oBoronic, and then Layers and Inbound were able to get the kill and make it 1-for-1. If oBoronic can at least get his damage off and force Johnny to only be able to trade his life away for 1 kill, then he's done more than enough, and the rest of Hype Unit should be able to win the 4v4 afterwards.
It's all going to come down to the timing, honestly, Finch, and if that Lightning Storm comes out a little bit too preemptively, well, Hype Unit could very well have the rug pulled out right underneath them. But one more time, Hype Unit going to revisit this Gold Fury, and that will undoubtedly draw the attention of Flashpoint back over. Layers already up in the air, though. This is looking like a hype unit commit.
It is. Flashpoint can feel better, though. There will be no wolves to worry about in this engagement as they grab the Gold Fury. Layers doesn't even dunk back in on top of the fight, so clearly hype unit just want to disengage. But Inbound could be the one they sacrifice. A nice Geb shield keeps him healthy. Frenzy popped as well, so maybe some turnaround potential.
Fusify, though, going to be the first one trapped up here and just blown up before getting a second chance.
Wolves, though, wants to try and keep fighting on the right-hand side. He's forced out, showed his ultimate. Hype unit won't continue to engage, but that's exactly the kind of fight they wanted.
They get the Gold Fury, they get a free pick. Fusify, I understand why he's leading the charge as the Fafnir, but my guy, you're level 10.
Yeah. They will just turn and burn you, as they have done all game long so far. And Fusify the one starting to struggle here now.
He died before he even landed from the Geb knockup. That was a Geb knockup, a split second, and that's all oBoronic needed. Underneath that lightning storm damage and the detonate, it was just overwhelming, clearly, for Fusify, and that's really concerning, I think, Finch, because when Chota's the only reliable frontline at this stage for Flashpoint, and he's only level 12, not 15 like Wolves.
He's been getting bullied by Wolves all game long, so you're right. That front line not being sturdy enough for Flashpoint might mitigate any hope Dzoni has of working his way to the back line or of setting up for these two basic attack hunters. They're going to need to get Fusify and Chota some farm to try and keep this game even, because so far it's been all hype unit. There's still, though, only about 3,000 gold or so out in front. This thing's not out of reach entirely just yet. Though I did want to point out, hype unit have invested into a good bit of anti-heal so far. I imagine that's largely for Dzoni on this set, since there's not any dedicated healers this time.
Just why not? Also, Inbound could be in a spot of trouble here. Gonna get infected by the bees. And a nice swarm placement from Sibi, but it's not that much damage when you break it all down. And this composition from hype unit as well, Finch, I think was specifically designed to annihilate hunters. Sibi and Kespainify have both definitely been struggling to get their damage output out there.
That's true. So far, neither one of these hunters have even gotten to be in any of these fights, really, in the way they'd like to. And that's just kind of how the meta is right now. They don't impact the game that much in this early phase, aside from just staying even. It looks like oGryph, though, following Kespainify's lead, going with this kin-size crit light sort of build here for the Jing Wei.
Feeling like a little bit of a necessity right now when constantly dealing with two Guardians.
Sure.
And instead of just the one, like what hype unit are running. And Fusify and Chota, I mean, they don't even really have that much health built up even. Wolves, not going to waste any more time. Instead, it's going to be the wombo from Layers.
And that was right on the tail end of the Purification beat as well. Sibi falls, but Chota was isolated underneath the Lightning Storm on the backside of the fight, and they still got Frenzy waiting in the wings for him. Fusify is the target, as he has been all game long. And now the CC chain begins, and the Dragon Burn will start. But maybe some turnaround, because Kespainify's made his way here, but it's just not enough. oBoronic burns down the Dragon.
And now it's only carries surviving for Flashpoint. oGryph, all the while, has just been freely split pushing while his team continues to win the fights without him.
That forces Kespainify to rotate back over to the tier 2 and all but guarantees the Pyromancer now for hype unit. Hype unit now starting to stretch this map out in a way that Flashpoint haven't been able to answer. They're still within striking distance for now, but hype unit, if they can maintain this pace, are starting to look pretty good to win this game.
oGryph starting to get a little frisky, but immediately backs off once he figures out that Dzoni's nearby. Dzoni's still trying to get chase, however. Inbound, not the healthiest either, but he's right on top of a Sentry Ward and has no idea. At best, he'll get this purple buff. At worst, could get counter collapsed.
Dzoni, I'm surprised and look for the turn. He doesn't have that much information, and perhaps trusting that Inbound wouldn't push up as alone as he was, but Dzoni has so much burn. He probably could have taken oGryph and Inbound in that last fight, but elects to be safer, knows how valuable his life, and in particular him farming, is right now, and staying even with Layers. He's kind of their win condition right now.
Doesn't it kind of feel like something is just hovering over this map right now?
Yeah.
Like, there's just...
It's the tension of being eliminated is what's hovering over
And
it.
it's Flashpoint that I think who are really feeling it right now, even in the player camps. You can kind of tell that the direction has shifted. The mindset is different now. reality, I think, is kicking in a little bit more so that Hype Unit are the ones who are heavily in control of Game 3.
Yeah, and sometimes it can happen where there's a mentality shift from at the beginning of the game where you're like, let's win this game, to where now it's like, let's not lose. And those might sound like the same thing, but they are very different in terms of your mental state in the game. And if they've shifted over to we can't lose instead of we want to win, then that could potentially be a bit of a problem.
Fusify still trying to keep Hype Unit at bay despite only being level 11 here. He has just been starved of farm on this map. Hype Unit have just been so relentless into punishing this Fafnir.
Wolves at the front line yet again, but keep an eye on Dzoni. He's the one looping around to try and come to the back of this Primal Fury, but Layers wants to do the same. He does it with the Anvil of Dawn, gets in and forces Flashpoint to fall back. That's Chota's ultimate on cooldown now as well in response to Layers. But Wolves, he's made his way to the back line. He's made his way to Sibi to keep him zoned away. It's all on Dzoni to stop the Primal from going down, but he can't find his way in. Hype Unit grabbed the objective and they want the fight.
Hype Unit aren't done just yet. Inbound looking to cut off Chota and Dzoni wherever he can. It's a pincer maneuver from Hype Unit, and oh, the Flashpoint's about to get caught up.
But they don't have OBoronic's ultimate. It was wasted in the back line. Will it be enough? Sibi gets the first kill, but Inbound and oBoronic answer back to make it 2 for 1. Make that 3 a double for the Geb. Layers, not to be outdone, finds one of his own. A perfectly timed wall and a double. That's a deicide for Hype Unit, and they're trying to end this game. I don't know if they can do it just off this fight, Taco, but they're looking like the stronger team.
They've got an entire wave coming through here, Finch, so at the very least, this might just be the left side Phoenix. Hype Unit, what are you? Don't back now!
They're backing. They must want Fire Giant here in this spot, right? They must be thinking back, let's spin a little bit of this gold and head straight towards the FG before anyone responds. But Taco, you're saying Phoenix.
Why not both, man? It's a level 11 Fafnir that's coming up. They've been cyberbullying all game already. I honestly think that could have been a Phoenix call there for Hype Unit, but hey, if the team wants to play it safe, I respect the player discipline all around, and they seem like they're all in agreement. oGryph's going to be the first one into the Fire Giant pit, and the first one out. Doesn't want to maintain pulling the objective entirely. And it's still a relatively safe call here for Hype Unit.
It's a very safe call, yes. But there's a chance their decision-making calculus is affected by Game 1 call, right? Yes, I think that that's what it is. That you don't want to be the guy that makes the risky call and throws this game now, because at this point it would be a throw, I think. They're that far ahead. Hype Unit now the favorites to win this game and close out this set and move on in this bracket as our first console team, but that's only if they can close this all the way out. It's not done yet. Flashpoint still have got to try and hold on, but I mean, this has just been Fusify's life, though, what's happening to him right now. This is brutal.
Not just Fusify, but also Sibi. I have not seen Sibi have room to breathe this entire map. This might be the first time we see Sibi actually able to do much of anything, and that's only because Wolves and Layers are a little bit later to the rally call here on the right side Phoenix.
Layers up in the air. He comes down right on top of Chota. Can't even get the ultimate off. And that is the Jormungandr removed. Kespainify, the next one in trouble. Aegis buys him a moment. Even makes it up onto the horse. Lord of the Afterlife, not enough for the kill. So Kespainify still alive, but the right side Phoenix has been melted. Hype Unit at this point can go wherever they'd like to on the map. Dzoni, they've recognized where he is as well. He's been pushed out, and they're going to head back towards the tier 2 in mid.
Fortunately for Flashpoint, Hype Unit still have a T1 and T2 tower there in the mid lane to worry about before they can afford to try and siege this mid Phoenix. So that'll be a temporary reset right now for Hype Unit, but temporary indeed, because they're already pushing into the T2 tower.
Tier 2 tower, as you said, is now under siege. Fusify goes in. It hasn't worked for them yet, but maybe this is where they can flip those tables. Frenzy has been popped, it would appear, from Hype Unit as they want to get this fight going. No, from Flashpoint to try and make their defense. And it has forced Hype Unit back long enough. In fact, they might even have a chance to try and grab these fights. Wolves is quite low. Chota goes in for the 2-man knockup, but he just doesn't have enough damage on his own. Hype Unit's still running, though. They're not looking for this fight.
This is going to be the best fight that Flashpoint could probably seek out at this stage in the game, though. Kespainify, however, going to get double tapped and obliterated. oBoronic now to follow it up with Sibi. Layers going straight up into the air. Chota could be the next target.
Comes right back down, and oBoronic completes the double kill. Rampage is inbound, gets a kill of his own, and Wolves completes the deicide. Taco, this very well should be it. Hype Unit have completed the deicide. They should be able to just grab this game. They're going right past all the towers this time. They don't need them. They've already gotten the Phoenix. They've been here before. They just got to get into the Titan room and clean this game up. He's going to even hold the aggro for the squad. Wolves, a team player, as they move in to grab the game and grab the set. Console are here to make some noise at the mid-season Invitational.
First blood has been drawn, and it's going to be Xbox coming out on top of valiant effort, I think, from Flashpoint. Nonetheless, not having their full roster here, I think, has certainly impacted them. But
Yes.
I don't want to draw away from Hype Unit's win at all. This team came through, and they were clean today.
Yes, I think until Game 3, Chota looked like he was doing really well for this team. I think in Game 3, though, with the Wolves finally on just a straight-up pressure pick in the solo lane, he did look a bit outclassed. But I think up until then, he gave them every chance to win. So I do think there is something to be said for not having Farrakrick there. But, I mean, that's just a clean win from Hype Unit, man. I mean, you can see what it means to these guys as they're clearly pumped.
Wolves just took over in Game 3. There just wasn't really much of anything that Flashpoint could do. Set just didn't have enough of that early game pressure presence to try and draw some of that Wolves' attention away. Even Layers was making Fusify's life absolutely miserable on that Fafnir.
Yeah.
It was just a really well-coordinated effort from Hype Unit.
Yeah, what a performance there from Layers as well, right? I mean, it just huge to keep his team in this set and end up grabbing that win. But congratulations all around to Hype Unit. The desk can break it down.
And break it down we will, John Finch. Thanks for calling the game as successfully as you guys did. But honestly, I don't want to call it. But at the end of the day, when you have a match like that, sorry to have a bad cast, Anatoly joining me on the desk to break this one down. And you heard Taco talk about the solo lane. Wolves kind of really stepping off there. We saw some people online. Lasbra of the SPL was talking about just how strong he liked the jungle. Layers popping off. I think you could really look at every member of Hype Unit and find a moment where they stepped up.
I mean, just that last team fight, you could see the pure damage coming from the Thor, especially when he was that far ahead. The Zeus combination, too, it was difficult to penetrate that backline through Inbound's Gab. A lot of peels coming out of him with the shell. Then also, the Frenzy enabled Hype Unit to actually get all the objectives, even though Flashpoint were the ones with the Fafnir, the Hachiman, the Muzen Cobb. They weren't the ones getting the Gold Furies.
11-1 here for Layers. That's certainly a pop-off. I think you're right there, Lasma. Great analysis there from home. But at the end of the day, looking at Bobby playing Geb with a Frenzy, this is the SPL meta. Use the Frenzy for the objectives, crush them down. And again, the question was, how much adaptation will we see? Hype Unit played their game with some changes, and I think that's the way to succeed if you're going to come in here. A lot of conversation in the wings about crossplay and watching these guys play with keyboards. I think that's pretty cool, but at the end of the day, the meta of the league that they play in is different. It's a different game over there, and so to see the adaptation is impressive. And this one goes to Hype Unit above Flashpoint. Can't complain about that.
I'm so excited to see the different styles between these teams in the crossplay for MSI, because even in the next set, we're probably not going to be seeing the same picks at all whatsoever.
Sure.
Hype Unit brings their own flavor to the mix. It certainly worked out between their mid-jungle synergy.
That was it, you know, and unfortunately I gotta ask the question, what would have happened if Farrakrick was here? But frankly, with the way that Hype Unit played, I think game number 1 was one of those games where, I mean, you've played as a player, and you've had games like game number 1.
It's happened in the past before where, you know, you make those calls and then sometimes it just doesn't go to plan. You see the future, you're trying to predict the future, and then there's like that one miscalculation that you can't really get off. So unfortunate end to game number 1, but being able to bounce back in games 2 and 3, Hype Unit is the real deal.
That's really what impressed me. That's kind of why I tossed it over there, because like, you know just how high that next barrier of entry is after you lose a game that you should have won. I will call that. Game 1 should have gone to Hype Unit. But unfortunately, they have to take 2 and 3. Flashpoint, we bid you adieu. Out Cold and Armada. The winner of that will go on to face Hype Unit. That's going to be a tall task as well. But it should be fun to watch for sure. Hype Unit took game number 1, and they did it with fervor. Match number 1, excuse me, as they move on. Let's take a look and see what these guys have to say after their match.
We're standing by now with the interview with Layers of Death, as well as Inbound here, the jungler and support for Hype Unit. First off, just congratulations, guys, on the win. I know you want to talk about how elated and everything that you all were after the win, but I do have to start, I think, with Game 1. Where was the team's heads at after losing that Game 1? Do you feel like it all came down to the end call not working out? Just talk to me about where the team was at and how that felt.
I think it was a mixture of the end call and then we built properly, or not properly. We built like poorly. I feel we just didn't have any anti-heal, so, and they kind of just ran the late game after our throw at the Titans. So.
Yeah, we definitely should have split up when we tried to end. We should have one on the right side, one on the left side. But we all just took oboe damage. I don't know. We could have ended there. I'm like almost positive, but yeah, we didn't.
Would have been a close call. I think that it was definitely risky, but that's not what this is all about.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you guys finding your first victory set win here today. How far are you guys planning on taking it?
I don't know. I want to get to the SPL round. Like I think we can play well against Armada or Outcold, whoever comes out of that. I don't know. I'm excited to play tomorrow.
I think if we can keep playing the way we are and build properly and just play as a team, we can beat Armada for sure if they come out.
Yeah, if we see more Thor games like we saw from today, then I'm on that same team as well. Do you all think, who else do you think is going to be joining you all, I guess, with the console flag, do you think, moving on beyond this first round? Because, I mean, to be fair, you all probably weren't the favorites, none of you coming into this one, but you showed just now that you guys can hang. Do you think anyone else can make it with you?
I think Rival's like the next favorite. Sanguine losing Yarkor. We scrimmed against Sanguine a lot before Slan, and Yarkor did a lot for that team, and not having him is going to hurt him a lot. I don't know how good their sub is, but I think Rival can play very well against them.
I agree.
Well, as far as you guys are concerned, though, and this really just like a team kind of thing, how are you guys feeling just overall in terms of coming to LAN, playing on mouse and keyboard as opposed to controller and stuff like that?
I don't know about the others, but I'm very comfortable with the keyboard. I've been practicing for like 2 months. I've been like grinding really hard and ranked and stuff, so personally I'm fine, but I don't know about the others. So.
I mean, I played at LAN on keyboard and did really well last time. On LG, we didn't do well, but yeah, I'm used to keyboard and mouse. I think all of us were pretty used to it. The only one was a little iffy was oBoronic, but I mean, like Zeus, like you don't need to be used to keyboard to play Zeus. Let's be honest.
I mean, it was the Hobble game that was great too.
Hobble,
So
yeah.
there you go. But you all don't ever ban Kuang in the first phase. I think in Game 2 you banned it the second phase, right? And there's so much talk about Johnny, how you have to ban it, but clearly you all were able to handle it. What was your mentality, I guess, around that pick as well, and not giving it maybe as much love as it always seems to get?
You can answer that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, he plays just a bunch of hyper carries, and if he doesn't get Kuang, he's going to play Kali. If he doesn't get Kali, he's going to play Susano. If he doesn't get Susano, he's going to play Baka. Like, he just plays hyper carries. Banning one away isn't going to stop him from playing that play style. And my job was just kind of, like, put it behind. Like, Game 2, I was just trying to harass him as much as possible and put him as far behind as possible. Like, it's obviously good when you don't build anti-heal. But, I don't know. That kid is still nuts. Like, every god he played, like, his positioning is insane. I don't know. Like, he played very, very well.
Well, you all deserve all the congratulations. I look very much forward to your next set here up against whoever wins out of Armada and Out Cold. So good luck in that one, and again, congratulations on your win. We'll be right back again here after this break.
Thank you.